Hello and welcome to ClapperCast. I'm your host as always, Carson Tamar, and today is a very special day because we get to review, finally, The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. A prequel to the main Hunger Games series, this feature takes place in the lead up to the 10th annual Hunger Games, where a young Cornelia Snow is tasked to prepare a young rebellious tribute from District 12 to be ready to take on the games. Today, Editor-in-Chief Jak-Luke Sharp joins the show to discuss how the film compares to the original series and to decide if this is a worthy return to Panem. Let's enjoy our review for The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
Come into the tree.
The Hunger Games, they're to punish the districts. Those tributes don't have a choice.
Your role is to turn these children into spectacles, not survivors.
So we both be free.
We're live!
Smile. It's why we have teeth.
Imagine it was your name that they pulled.
Strange things do happen here.
I just want to know that somebody still cared about me, that I was still of value.
Welcome to the Capitol.
You look like you shouldn't be here.
I shouldn't, but I'm your mentor.
A rebel.
Okay, and I would love to start today, before we get into The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, to get the full title, I would love to just quickly get a temperature check on what our vibes are on this franchise. Not necessarily a play-by-play, we don't need to get into every specific detail of every single film, but just, are we a fan of The Hunger Games? Are we skeptical of the series? Where have we been? I will quickly start by just saying I was at the prime age, teenage years when this came out. My school was not into Twilight. We were not into any of the things that came before. We were into the Hunger Games. I didn't read anything before I watched the first film. Really enjoyed it, read all the books then, started going to the midnight premieres. I went to the midnight premiere, weirdly, of the Walmart DVD release for the first film. Don't really know why I did that, but, kind of iconic behavior. I think it's a series of diminishing returns. I think the first two, really excellent. I know a lot of people will put number two ahead of number one. I think number one just has a little bit of a craft there that I really appreciate, but both really fantastic. Then you just get Mockingjay Part 1, which I find boring. Mockingjay Part 2, I just find disastrous, big budget, horrible action, just lost everything I loved about the franchise. But overall, I definitely am a fan. So when they announced they were releasing a new book, I didn't read it, but I was like, oh, that's fun that we're doing this. And now back on this big screen with Francis Lawrence directing again, I will say, okay, I got a vibe. I was like, you know what? This is reminding me of my youth. I'm excited. So I will say overall, though, definitely a fan of the franchise, even if I think two of the four films are bad. But Jack, I don't know what your thoughts on this are. I know you just rewatched them. Are you a fan of this franchise at all?
It was strange because I think we both did it out of curiosity more than... I don't think I even wanted to go watch this, but I'll get back to that a bit later. This is I'm the Harry Potter generation, so the Harry Potter series was the one that, obviously being English as well, is sort of a priority. But that was a series that I got into in my youth, and then echoed out in 2012, 2011, which when I left high school. So this came out at the start of my filmmaking journey, Hunger Games, in 2012 when I went to college for film, and I remember it being massive. I remember people we joked about this last week, but people wearing the Mockingjay badge and stuff, and it sort of grew up. Then I watched the first one. I thought nothing much of it because when you're in essentially the first year of film school, everyone shits on stuff like this anyway, which I don't think is very fair, but it is what it is. Or it's like a battle royale clone. So I thought nothing of it, and then weirdly enough, I think I spoke to you about this before, but for anyone else listening, I went with a friend with two free cinema tickets, and we went to go watch Catching Fire and Prisoners, and Catching Fire was a massive surprise to me, and I think I know what you mentioned. I'm going to echo that. I thought Catching Fire was superb. I thought it caught that stoicism. I thought it caught that horrible, grainy nature to it, that rebel nature to it. I thought it was really sort of saturated, flat, and I thought it really did capture that sentiment of what the film was doing. Like you, I didn't think much of Mockingjay Part 1, and for the long time of my life, I didn't really watch the two. sequels to that, nor did I really give a shit anyway. I don't think I ever take it sort of, even if I did watch them, I don't think I ever took them on board. And then, like you said, weirdly enough, I was ill during our Exorcist stuff, so I thought I'll watch the Hunger Games on Netflix, and I binged them. And I found a newfound appreciation for the first film, how that got away with what it did under the constraints of budget, but also the tone I thought was really well done as well. Really like that's catching fire again. I agree with you in a sense sentiments with Mockingjay Part 1. It's just trying to bridge the gap, and I know they've come out and said that they should never really have split the films. Yeah, I sort of agree with that, but it's interesting how the first film was very much Hunger Games based as in the event, and they slowly but surely devolve into societal issues and propaganda to get where we are now with this, which I find an interesting combination of the two. But like you, I thought there were diminishing returns, but I didn't think much wanting to go into this. I thought that it was at bed, and I thought it was fine. I thought it was a YA thing, like the Maze Runner and that stupid Divergent thing, which I've never seen, so I'll be honest there. But I just thought it was put to bed very much like you did. I thought the Twilights were done, and then the next generation would have theirs. But this seems to have legs. Surprising, I didn't go to the Walmart release. I wasn't there, unfortunately. but yeah, it's strange how much of a backing this has. I didn't think this had much of a fan base.
I didn't think still.
Oh no!
I didn't think this still had what it did. I mean, like, this has really become like a moment for some reason, this film, which we'll get into. Originally wasn't even going to be covered on the podcast. I'll peel back the curtain a little bit. I was like, oh, you just rewatched all of them. I will give you a Ferrari episode if you give me a Hunger Games episode. Maybe
Democracy.
a little, a democracy, right?
Yeah, give and take,
Right.
I feel like I've benefited more from that than you have, but I'll take that.
I agree. As I was walking to the theater, I was like, well, I don't know if I was going to put something on the line, this maybe should have been what I did. But, we're here. We live.
We all lose bets. We all lose bets. We get on with it, don't we?
Absolutely. I think that's a good transition to talk about The Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Taking a break from the episode, I want to tell you guys about a great sponsor we have for today's episode, and that is Zencastr. Now, look, we have been recording podcasts for a long time here on ClapperCast, and in that time, we have used multiple platforms to record and edit our episodes, but since going to Zencastr, we haven't looked back. Zencastr is an incredibly easy and free to use platform where you can record both audio and visual for your podcast. No more downloading apps or struggling to connect with guests. Instead, you can share a link to literally anyone and have them join through their browser for an episode to make your podcast streams a reality. Not only can you record with studio quality visual and audio, but you can also edit in a breeze. We love using Zencastr, and if you want to use Zencastr yourself, let me tell you about a pretty good deal. While yes, you can use Zencastr for free, there are also some great tools with a paid plan. If you want to go ahead and get yourself a paid plan to make your podcast dreams a reality, go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code ClapperCast, and you will get 30% off your first month of any Zencast paid plan. Again, let me tell you, I have been through the market. I have seen the different sites. I've seen the different apps. I've seen what everyone is using, and nobody is doing it like Zencastr. We love you here on the podcast, Zencastr. We wouldn't be what we are without you, and we would love to see all of our listeners go use Zencastr. Remember, code ClapperCast at zencastr.com/pricing to get 30% off your first month of any Zencast paid plan. With that, let's go back to the episode. Jack, you can start us off here. Ooh. I don't know what your thoughts were. You're fresh off of viewing, I know. So I'm excited. What are your raw initial takes? You've not had time to digest. No, what are your thoughts on the film?
You're not, just to the audience and the viewers, that's no joke there. I finished this an hour ago. I came back. It's pissing down outside. It's freezing. So I've just been sat trying to listen to some music and digest it. Just a bit of backstory. Like I mentioned before, and I think very much like you, when this was announced, I'm not going to say I didn't give a little bit of a laughing gimmick. I remember when they announced this, and it was like they're going to make a prequel in the future. They might make sequels if Jennifer Lawrence wants to come back. And I thought, sometimes they've had the day. It did quite well. I think diminishing returns. I'll think nothing of it. And I went to go watch Saw X, and the trailer came up. and I was like, oh, okay, interesting. I can see what they're going through. I can see what target audience. Yeah, I'm not really that bothered. And then um, Alistair Ryder, who writes for Xavier and Looper, follow them on Twitter. Really good fun. He's very funny tweets, very much tongue in cheek. Reviewed this. The first person I saw reviewed it 4 stars, and that slightly perked my interest. And then I don't know about you, but then the fallout from that was considerable. 4s, 4.5s, 3.5s. Nothing. Yes. Some people give it 5s, but I didn't think much of it. And then I thought to myself, I watched the reruns of the first 4, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe we'll give this a go. I think there's 2 things I'm going to get straight out of here. Right, the title's too long. Granted, it's based off the book. I'll give them that, so I'll let that go. And it's 2.5 hours long, if not hitting 2:35. It's too long. Okay. However, I think this perfectly bridges the tonal and thematic gap of what the first Hunger Games did 10 years ago now, and what the last 2 accomplished. And I think it's a perfect perfection of. I mean, I was going to leave this a bit later, but I think it's important. We did Kills of the Flower Moon last week, and we spoke about entertainment value and the content of that, and watching certain things allegorical and perspective. And I felt that this was all here, but just hidden. Not hidden in a way that you have to find it, but it's so obvious that it's so over, it's covert. It has so much allegorical iconography, which we'll get into later, I'm sure. And I just found myself sat there thinking, they might nail this. And slowly as it went on, I was like, they're giving fans what they want with the Hunger Games aspect, the actual event itself. But there's actually so much more world building that we didn't really get till maybe the 3rd film, and even then it was more so about the propaganda. And I just felt myself to be like really engaged with this, really immersed. I thought it was really fun, entertaining, quite harrowing at times. Wonderful choice of depiction certain things. I think certain disabilities in here. People who were not able-bodied, I thought was interesting depictions. It all felt organic. Trans representation. Nothing was given much leeway to that either. It wasn't thrown in people's faces. It felt really organic and honest. I've got a few issues with certain other things. I think I'll let you get to this after, because you might disagree with me, but I think it does tail off. I think almost 3 hours at 2:45, 2:35. I think it trails off undeniably, and it's difficult to sit through all that and have that final chapter, which we'll get into again. There's a choice there with framing, but there's a final sort of 40 minutes, 30 minutes on here where it's like I don't want to say this disparagingly, but it's like watching a balloon lose air. Very strange. It was like took everything out of the steam of it. But I think I'm sort of there with where there thereabouts with my opinion on it. But the thing that I could just say straight away is I'm genuinely shocked at how well done this is, and considering that Francis Lawrence did the last 3 and the last 2 were meh. I'm genuinely shocked. This has no right to be as good as it is, and I don't want to say that disparagingly, but whew, this is probably the surprise of the year. The year, I can't believe I've said that, but this is probably for me the surprise of the year. I thought it was solid.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be a little bit, hold it up. I'm happy for you. I'm gonna be a little bit more skeptical about this film, I guess you can say. There's a lot here to like. I think, like, number one, taking a break, obviously, from the last film and the last additions to this franchise, there's a lot here for fans to enjoy and love. You mentioned we're back to the games, so many little references and hidden things there. I just think, like, it's very well made. My biggest issue with Mockingjay Part 2, as I mentioned, is I feel like it loses the, like, plot of what a Hunger Games film is, why people love this franchise, why people love this world, why people love their characters, their narratives. And it's all here. I think this is absolutely a return to form. I think the world building here is great. I love this idea of seeing Panem earlier in, like, the 10th Hunger Games it is. I like seeing how things are building. I think especially towards the end, there are some interesting concepts here as you see the rise of President Snow. I think that for me, the runtime, yes, way too long. But a lot of the big emotional swings, I think the biggest issue with the runtime is that the things that it's building, the narratives it's building for its characters, for me felt a little bit underwhelming. As a prequel, obviously we know where a lot of these things are going. We know the outcomes. To spend an hour, let's say, setting up President Snow and setting up the idea of, like, oh, we could have people or pay money for their tributes. I don't know, like, there's things like that where, like, it didn't necessarily shock me or engage me as much as I wanted to, because it felt like the results, the outcomes of the film overall, as a fan, I know what they are. It didn't feel like it was necessarily as worthy, especially for the runtime. If this was like a 90-minute, 110-minute film, I think they would flow a lot better. And I think the rewards can be far lesser for that experience. But for me to sit through something this long, I don't know. I also know about the pacing and the structure of this, especially after the games conclude, which I think the games, it's a mixed effort. There are little peaks here of like fantastic filmmaking where it's like all one shot. They're not cutting. It's really engaging and vibrant action. But then it will like use some weird CGI or it will weirdly cut. And it's like, I didn't find it to be as flawless as if you watch those first two movies and you see the games. And I think that's one of my favorite parts, and why I really excuse those films for the runtime is I love that you get that structure of everything before the games, and then you have the games as this large, big section of runtime, and it's really, really well done. I don't know if this fully delivered in the same way. I guess I could kind of weirdly relate some of this to like Saw X in my opinions there, where it's not what it's doing is bad, but when you compare it to what's been done in the past, this is not necessarily delivering as a fan of this franchise what I perfectly like want. Not that it's necessarily terribly bad. The one thing I will say is that the lead actress's accent was not that for me. It did not do it for me. Really distracted me. And I will say continually her singing sequences are supposed to be these big emotional moments in the film. Those landed quite flat and almost felt comedic at times for me. But I don't know. I don't hate this film by any means, but it was a little bit more underwhelming and boring, specifically due to the runtime. I just feel like it tried to flush itself out way too much, and it didn't have the substance for me there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to take away from it. There's a lot I probably wouldn't disagree, and there's a lot that we probably would join in to talk about momentarily, because there's some stuff here that is quite challenging to watch. First and foremost, I feel like because we're going to talk about this towards the end, but with a prequel, it's sort of catch-22, isn't it? I think they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. However, a really good prequel sort of sets its sights away from its following film enough that they don't have to sort of end the full stop and start the new sentence or the other one. There's multiple other films which like the thing that they did on Uncut Gems not so long ago, which I think is an interesting take to do it. But ultimately, as a creator, as a director, and ultimately, as cool as that is, to engage with that, when it ends. And it's very much similar to this in that we don't really get the full stop and get the next sentence. Granted, I think we get to like the next chapter. We know what's following, of course, and I think it did to its plot. It emphasizes itself away from that to a certain degree. But once the prequel is set in motion and we know essentially where it's going to end, you have to have a really airtight story. You have to have really interesting characters present, and you have to have a really interesting, engaging narrative. And I think it's just the one thing where I watched this and I don't really see the Donald Sutherland character here at all. And I'm not knocking that, because I think it's fair enough if it wants to move away from it. But I don't know if you agree with me, but for me, I was just watching a different type of film set in this universe. I didn't need it to necessarily be him. I don't find the mystique behind Donald Sutherland's character in three films to be enough to determine to have 2.5 hours of it beforehand to see him ultimately change his course and his discourse on world events. I don't really think this film earns that, nor do I think the character does either. However, I think to the film's credit, I do find it slightly engaging just seeing a person essentially just derive and devolve into just cruelty. I think that's an interesting pathological aspect to someone's psyche. That being said, I don't know. I think it's like the John Carpenter thing when he says about Rob Zombie's Halloween. I think once you give someone evil a backstory and you try to get them engaged and give them some sort of a character arc. We spoke about this with Ernest in Kills the Flower Moon. You give them a conscience. You're in very tricky waters there, because ultimately we don't see in the trilogy, I'll call it, but the quadrilogy, we don't really get to see him get his hands dirty, although we understand he's a dictator here. He's making active choices, which I think elevated the material in itself. That this guy is like slowly just devolving into something that at the beginning he hated. I appreciate that, but like you, I'm just like, I don't think it gained that. On the lead actress, we spoke about this, I think, off air, and I'm going to be one of those people where I've sort of drank the Kool-Aid in that all I see is ego with certain videos will come out, which is unfortunate because I think Rachel Zegler in West Side Story is a really strong actress. I was, I think, how do I say this? I think watching a certain performer evolve throughout their career for me is far more rewarding. I want to see people who have done short films, who have done TV shows and had that big break and then chosen very distinct pieces of material. I think Daniel Radcliffe, post Harry Potter, excellent. Andrew Garfield, excellent choice. I think Robert Pattinson, excellent choice. And granted, those are three males. I don't want to disparage anyone else out there. Just those are three aspects of who I've seen ultimately grow up within a certain era. Um, Rachel Zegler is an interesting one because she's done 3 major box office films I've seen, and I don't think I've seen anything to determine anything else outside that circle. She was redundant in Shazam. I should never have chosen that. That's an incredibly poor choice. West Side Story to me was the big one. I think she's really good in that, but she's playing again with pre-existing material. This one is an interesting one for her to take on because she's going to constantly be compared to Jennifer Lawrence. Does she make it her own? Not necessarily. It feels like that symmetrical rhyming of what George Lucas said about Star Wars. It rhymes. Well, maybe, but I feel like it's always in that shadow. I think this isn't necessarily her film either, which I think is a mistake. I think they should play each other accordingly. And I think this film definitely takes their side, which I don't feel necessarily comfortable in the long run. But yeah, the accent was a choice, very much so a choice. And I think for a lot of people, it's going to take them out. For me, I just thought it was a choice that didn't work. It didn't feel detrimental, but I can understand as an American, you can find issues of that. The one thing I found, which again, I don't like musicals, so she'll shoot me dead. It's all right, but the way that she executes her musicals, that she looks in the camera every time, and I'm gone. Then I'm just like, we're focusing on the fourth wall break, and they're so theatrical at the cast, and it's like screams theatre kid to me, and that's what it felt throughout the film. It was like, I can act, I can sing, and I can dance, and it's like that theatrical putting on a show, and there's just no immersion. And I think there's 2 really really poor scenarios. There's one when she first gets in the reaping, which I was like, oh, very strange. And then the other one is in towards the latter end of the Hunger Games itself with the certain objects that wrap around her and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's very much performance. And then I thought to myself, well, perhaps that's the ideology of the film itself. She's performing to Cornelius, she's performing to Panem, she's performing essentially to herself. I'll give it leeway. But the crux of it for me is I don't see any evolution between those 3 films. And the fact that she's done Snow White before this, but that's getting released. We spoke about this off air for other reasons. Yeah, I'm interested to see where it goes. But for me, I think there's 3 films there that are incredibly safe. And it's a shame because I think there could be something there, but I need to see that because box office is one thing and it's not been incredibly kind to her.
Yeah.
But this one is going to be an interesting. But I don't think she's even the highlight here either, which is even more strange. Yeah.
She's constantly pushed like the background other than those performative moments where she steps out. I just think it's like rough. I think everything you can say what you want about her. I really like Zegler as a actor from what I've seen. I think the issue is just continually she's been put in positions that are rough. West Side Story was a great start. I think that's a great, like, if you're going to bounce into the scene, flawless. But like Shazam, as you mentioned, rough. Here, I don't think it was her choice to do the accent. Plus, I don't think it was her choice to be used how she was. You have Snow White, which is a disaster, a snowball that just grows every single day for other reasons. Like, I just continually, she is someone who's getting screwed over by the choices that I don't blame her for. I think she has proven to have like the ability as an actor. Y2K, she's in Kyle Mooney's film. Maybe we'll see where that goes. But I think she's desperate for like a Swiss Army man. Like, I think she's desperate to like go small, prove your chops, grow a voice, grow an identity, take some risks, and then come back. I don't think it's doing her any favors to be positioned how she is. I don't think it's doing anything for her. We'll see. But I mean, she's, again, I just think like it's so frustrating to talk about her even in context of this film because like everything she is doing, I think she is doing well. I think it's just the fundamental choices with her character that like make it to where I do not like her. But
to be
whatever.
Yeah, to be clear and honest as well, I think when I see ego, I mean that's the depiction that she gets put forward online, not necessarily by herself, by no means. She's 22 years old, right? She's 5 years older than I am, um, and she's been
Younger.
well, yeah. I tried to get that one away. I tried to get one away. I'm not 35. I'm not 32. I'm not. Yeah, she's 5 years younger than I am. I'm 5 years older than her, and I can see that being put into positions there and being told to speak on things. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into this because it's a different trajectory, but she was sort of shit on with West Side Story because she had to deal with a certain co-star that she did not have to speak for, and people wanted her to speak for them, and I felt it was so unfair at the time. 22, she was even younger; she'd have been 18. 18-year-old, maybe a bit younger during production. Because Marie in West Side Story, Spielberg's wanted to make that film for 40 years, and she's in a press tour having to answer for someone's deplorable actions. I just thought it was so unfair. Shazam, horrible box office, horrible film. She had to answer for that. Then a co-star, also two of them now, talking absolute riddles online about certain things. She's then having to deal with that. With this, you know, it's Jennifer Lawrence's vehicle. How's she going to cope with that? And I think that she does a good choice here with certain things. But like you said, she's just trapped behind making probably a projection of something that's not akin to really what the film is going to. I think you don't want to make a tragedy either. You want to give her some life. But the way I felt this film was going, especially when he goes to the gates and he gives her food and they slightly embrace, but she pulls back. He's like, "Is this real? Is this real?" That moment forward was like, yes, she's playing him because she needs to survive this. But then it like double crosses itself when we get to the bar towards the end when they first see each other again, and she's like really happy. I'm like, girl, like you've just survived one of the most horrifying. There's just choices here that I think that feel like it's been shot out of sync, and she's not really grown with that, and I think that's probably just a lack of maturity within filmmaking. I don't think it's necessarily I think a critique of a performance, but yeah, I agree with you. And then she's also going to have to make some choices with the other thing that's coming out in 3 years' time, which I think is well 2.5 years' time, which is frightening. And she's going to have to answer that as well, which I feel unfair for. But then people when she's going on SAG and after, and people have got a microphone in front of her face, and she's in the heat, and she's 22, and people are asking her silly questions. They're gonna get silly answers, and I do feel slightly sorry for her. I think if she comes out of this, I think she'll come out strong. I think the box office here will do her really good favors, and if she wants to jump ship and do something a bit more low key, yes, I think she can fill loads of voids up. I think she's very much there to evolve and learn. She's not an actress that I think would just sit down and be comfortable where she is. I think she looks like she can really do something. But yeah, there's strange creative choices here, and I can only think of that to be, from a theatre background, which wouldn't surprise me, but hasn't worked in enough pieces of medium to understand. Not necessarily understand. I don't want to sound like I'm patronising her at all, but I think longevity adds a lot more emotional weight, a lot more talent, a lot more ego dives down, talent evolves, and to just be not be given it, but to have these three films on essentially one after each other hasn't really done a great deal. And the one thing that does worry me, Carson, I don't know if you might agree with this, I'm slightly worried that she's going to get burnout, and not her on a personal level, but audiences. It happened to The Rock. It's happening to Marvel. It's happening to certain things, and three big box offices on the run. I mean, first world problems, don't get me wrong, but I think for a lot of audiences, if they tire from one, they might tire with another. I just hope she doesn't do a Marvel thing or something next. Just let it go
Yeah.
now. You've done the box office. Look at Jennifer Lawrence. Go make your go make your Causeway. Go make what's the
Yeah.
first film she made? I can't remember what it's called. Something Bone.
Oh, Winter's Bone.
Yeah, go make something like that. Just
Yeah.
go and make something with someone who's technically gifted behind the camera as well. She's got enough time now to choose. She's in a very
Yep.
good place to pick and choose. Yeah.
If I was her, I would definitely have a conversation with Jennifer Lawrence. Like, not just obviously the Hunger Games
Yes.
connection, but like just even with where their careers were. I mean, and even now we're at a way more hostile time, I would say, like, as far as having the narrative of this new woman jump on the scene. There's all this like political nonsense. Obviously, you've mentioned like she's in a far worse position than Jennifer Lawrence was. Jennifer Lawrence like went and won an Oscar immediately.
Yes.
I think that she desperately probably needs someone like Jennifer Lawrence to give advice and give hope. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, it's all ends up good for her.
And
I will say,
I
Yeah,
But I
go
was
for
just
it.
gonna say I agree there, and not to get like again personal on the matter, but I think it's always really good to have a mentor. It's always really good to look up to someone who's been there and done that. And Jennifer Lawrence, like you said, the trajectory from 10 years, she was 22, the same age. She won an Oscar not a year later. She went to go work with she went to another franchise that burnt her out. She stuck back. She stood down from that eventually, but she worked with multiple different auteurs. She worked with someone I don't really want to name on multiple types of films that she needs to stop doing. Yeah, I know. And then she's been there and done that, taken a massive pause. She's been in the public eye for the reasons she wouldn't want to be, with certain things leaking, which is probably one of the 21st century horrifying thing to happen to oneself. I can't even think of how that would be to be. Public breakup, got married, had a child. Very in 10 years, she's evolved into to a very different person, and I think Zegler could find something there. And granted, Zegler probably has a really good support key there behind her anyway. But I think you're right. I think to look at Jennifer Lawrence and be like, well, she was in this position, things she might have done things differently. She might have wanted to choose different projects, and I think she could really do that. But I do wish she just goes and just makes a film like just go and make a film of an auteur, just something, you know. Get a little festival, darling. I think then build it up from there. She's got all the time in the world now.
Yeah. I think DC's dead, so I think she has at least that commitment done. I feel like we might be seeing her return to Panem eventually, but we'll see. I will say Tom Blythe, I was pretty okay with. I haven't seen him in much. I know he was in Robin Hood. He played a little role in Benediction. I thought he was pretty okay here as the lead as President Snow. Nothing necessarily phenomenal, but I think probably one of the better. I mean, when you're surrounded by people like Peter Dinklage or Viola Davis and you're having to share the screen with them, I think it's obviously a big task to stand your own, especially if you don't have that experience or that weight behind your name. I thought he did good, I'll say.
I would agree. I think weirdly enough, granted the film essentially is about his characters. Let's no, I'm not going to say weirdly, but he's got a lot of weight on his shoulders there because he needs to project a sympathetic, but then ultimately a villainous role. I think there's a strong trajectory there. And very much like Zegler, there's not much behind that career. I think he's actually from Nottingham as well, which is I've worked there, so it's a very working class place to live. So I think that's giving him definitely some insight into that type of character and seeing that type of political ruling in this country as well. Not that it's like Panem, but it's not fucking utopia. But granted, I think there's a lot there for him to wrestle with, and I think he does an excellent job. But there's one thing different between him and Zegler is that Zegler's character is ultimately relied and put to one side to use emotive prowess through song, which I feel is very hard to do if it's not hitting the heights. Whereas Tom Blythe has the opportunity to just say it with a face, with his eyes. And there's a scene when they first see each other. It's like I said again, after everything happens and they're in a bar, and he just the lights just on him. We see his blue eyes just coming out, and we see him, and his face drops. It's just all physical. It's all external. When Zegler, to a credit, has to do internal, external, and perform. And there's a lot there to do for any type of performer there to nail it. Really, really highbrow type of stuff. But Tom Blythe is being given sort of the weight to be able to sort of be regulated to use external prowess. I think he does a very good job here. Like you said, he does rely on that a lot. But granted, I think what's not said here is probably more powerful in a lot of other sentiments rather than just the performance. Yeah. I thought it was good. I thought it was good. There's definitely some choices he utilizes as well. I think the film really wants to wrestle with the conscience there, and then sort of gives up on it, and then goes on it again and gives up. Uh, it's a tough one because he's incomparable to anything else. But again, do you see a Donald Sutherland here? Perhaps, but I think I think he gets to wrestle with this on his own. I think he's fine. I think he'll come out of this fine. It gives me sort of young Keanu Reeves vibes, which I quite like. I thought was quite warming in the fact that he just seemed to want to go into this role and give it 110%, and I quite like that. Again, Ziegler does the same thing, but he's definitely got a lot to ride on. I think he did a pretty amicable job. Yeah, there's nothing to really. Because granted, I'm like stumbling on my words because I'm trying to think, but there's nothing really here where I'm like, that's the scene. I didn't know if you felt like that as well. I didn't think it was like, that's it. That's it. There was one moment where I think he absolutely fumbled the bag. Is when he gets his final climactic meeting with Viola Davis's character, and I think that there is a choice that I don't think he gets. That I think that's one where you can really nail the steam out of something. And again, he has another option to do it with Dinklage's character momentarily later. And I also think he fumbles that as well. So there's definitely room for improvement, but there's just again, you could probably argue that's screenplay issues, but I felt like there is just a camera on him. We take all the diegetic sound out, and he has his monologue, and it's just okay, yeah. But I feel like that's eventually what the film became anyway. I don't know if you agree. I feel like the film just like
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a film that inherently, like, well, not inherently, but like continually drops the ball when it comes to those emotional moments because it favors the performance. It favors the performative moments where it's a big, everyone in the room is, silent and shocked and still, and everyone rises to their feet in emotion as she's singing the song on the rock while creatures surround her, let's say. Like, that's where the film thinks the power is, but that's never where the power is really. Like, I can't think of many films where that's truly like the best moments. It should be in the monologues, it should be in the dialogues, it should be in those smaller moments of venom, of wickedness, of hope, of love. And the film just continually doesn't give those scenes the power they deserve and instead gives the focus to the more performative aspects. I think it's just an inherent issue with how the film like fundamentally thinks, which is the one area where I think it doesn't necessarily capture the understanding of those first two films. When you look at those first films, I mean, the first one is like, very raw with emotion as Katniss is going in, she's saying goodbye, she's being ripped away from her sister. Those are very authentic moments of, power. And the second one, you get all the tributes, like holding hands on the stage. Like, it's very smart with where it places its power. And it's never a performative spotlight is on them, that is the big moment. It's in these organic moments where that emotion and power creeps out, even to the point where like the plot itself says this in the future ones where it's trying to create moments of emotion, and they say you can't force these things. This film, it just never feels like it understands how to create those poignant moments, at least for me. Again, I mean, a lot of people are loving this film, so I can't deny it if you think that you walked out crying thinking this is a masterpiece. But like, for me, it just never had the bite or the venom. Even in Snow's character towards the end, as he becomes more wicked, it never had the like punch that I think it wanted to. And it should. It's like children dying, right? Like, that is
yeah.
the plot here. It should have more of a punch. That first film has a punch when they go into the arena and you see the death on screen as it begins. Like, that is a very like haunting, powerful cinematic moment. Here it just kind of is like,
Yeah, there's
really
definitely
there.
like cinematic choices. Like I remember like Catching Fire when she's talking to Lenny Kravitz, and the music arises when he's getting tied off, and she's screaming bang on thing, and we go up in the tube, and it changes the aspect ratio to IMAX from 190.1, and then it's like do the music starts, the Hunger Games commence, and then it's bang, here we go. And they also did the very similar technique again with a different type of budget in the first film where the sound goes and she's just watching horror. And here they don't choose that tender, like you said, like tender choice to really point home. They then decide to go the cinematic way in terms of long shots, four type edits where there's no cuts, but there really is. And granted, it's all. I remember watching it and saying the same thing internally, like, "Oh, that looks good," but it doesn't hold any weight. It just looks good. And I think a pivotal scene for me is where he goes to the train tracks in the first one. Again, Holocaust imagery, allegorical stuff there. It's all there, but it's in the background. It's there for us to soak up, very much like Catching Fire was, rounding them out, putting them in the public. A terrible type of like Russian oligarch type of stuff there. It's horrendous. Here, we see the train arrive, and we see people get torn up. We can hear screams in the background. The bat flies away for foreshadowing later on. But then there's it gives the rose petal, and she has this like semi type of monologue about about past, a little bit more texture to the narrative, a bit more layers, and it's just flat though. After that, we just drop it. It's just flat, and we have this moment again when we go to the bar. We have this moment where they're in the cage together. It's just, I don't know. There's a lot of tenderness that could have been encroached here, where it's just, I don't get to see a relationship develop into a way that feels really organic. And I think it very much does blindside that final climactic end where they make a sudden choice to run away. And he sort of cocks up by saying a certain thing, and she holds on to it, and then she's so obviously pedantic about it. It's like, oh, again, choices, but they're in that field and they have a discussion about stuff, and I just don't feel it. I'm just like, I can see where this is going. Perhaps that's a product of its issue, with its narrative, and I know what's coming. But I want to really feel engulfed that these are star-crossed lovers. I really do want to feel that they can make it, and even at that final minute, still sink into that feeling. But it didn't really get to me, and I don't think there's a tenderness of enough material to give them to actors and actresses credit, because they've definitely got chemistry. I think I can definitely see something there where I'm like, okay, these two are the foiling, and there's definitely something there. And I wanted that thing in the back of my mind where I wanted to feel like he was playing her, because that's the projection we get, because his narrative is more focused and linear. And then there was that moment where I was like, oh shit, she might be playing him there, and I really wanted that when they're in the bar to really come alive. And then it's like something happens and bang, she's on his side. I'm like, again, nuance. I think that's the word I'm looking for. There's just very little nuance. What you see is what you get, which is just strange considering that there's a lot in the background here, which is like, oh shit, that's haunting. I mean, there's depictions of hanging, lynching here essentially, and it's grim. There's snapping, there's stuff like that. There's choices to go that far, but then there's no nuance in other aspects, and I think that ultimately embodies what this film is trying to do. Which I don't know about you, but I felt that's the same mistakes Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2 did as well, where the nuance is taken out and we just see extreme. So we don't really get build up of Katniss killing Julianne Moore's character. It just happens, and then we don't get to see a final resolution for Snow's character, Donald Sutherland. We just see him laughing, spitting blood, and then bang a crowd, and she tries to kill herself, and bang, we wake up. I feel that encapsulates this film entirely. There's nothing wrong with that, but I just think that this franchise had that extra bit of bump. What I saw with 2012 Hunger Games is essentially what this film was. I wanted this to be catching fire, where I wanted this to push. I wanted this to be about someone very angry, who at the end of that film is becoming incredibly angry with everything, and that's our hero. This is a different twist of it, but I wanted this film to get angrier and angrier, to really see it bubble, sorry. But also I wanted to see it just get pushed, go for that 12, that PG-13, just push the fucking thing a little bit more out. And I think there's definitely room for it here. I just think I think it just lacks a little bit of bite, and all things considered with the world today, with certain allegorical themes here, I can understand in more ways than one to pull back. But I think this is a franchise that felt distinctively different earlier on, didn't it? By not being held back to certain priorities and really pushing it. But I mean, it's just it's small change, but it does annoy me in certain places.
That's why the first film was so like big and iconic. I would say even a big part of it is that it pushed things. It pushed, whether you're talking about the violence within it or the themes or what it's trying to say, the messaging. Like, it was a franchise that felt bold, right? In that first two films, especially. And then, as you mentioned, it goes on and on. I think this feels much more like, if in the context of like in a vacuum of teen movies, I would say this is like a step up than most for sure, but it doesn't feel like it elevates itself beyond that teen identity, right? Between the genre, let's say. I think those first two Hunger Games do feel that way for me. It just feels like I agree with you completely. It just never feels like it reaches that elevated status, or it never feels like it takes necessarily like the risks it should or could. It feels a bit reductive for the franchise in that way. And I don't think it's crazy to like expect similar, if not like for it to go beyond what the franchise has established. We're almost a decade on from the final film being released. We're returning to this world, returning to this characters. Obviously, we had the book published, I don't know, a few years back. I don't know what year it was published, but like, it feels like it should come back with a purpose and a voice. And you've had time to build and craft and feel the power of a franchise that came before you. And I just feel like it underwhelms when it comes to all of that. I feel like it just feels reductive. It's not terrible. Like, it's finely made. It's fine for what it is. But I want more, especially when in 2012 you accomplished so much more, much less in 2013 with a bigger budget. That's why this franchise stood out. This film is not matching that.
Yeah, I mean, again, so bringing it back to the Harry Potter thing, which essentially I grew up on. When I look at Prisoner of Azkaban, again, Alfonso Cuarón, filmmaker in his own right, definitely. But I think if you even look at Goblet of Fire, which is Mike Newell, which is very much a different body of skin, but again, same template. I felt that those two films push pushed the PG-13 and the 12 rating in this country, and I think in the US as well, with depictions of death, with cruelty, especially the latter films as well, with certain aspects of like bodily harm, really pushing the boundary there on an audience that is old enough to be going through those things and not necessarily understand choices and understand their minds and the brain and the body. There's definitely choices there that they put into the background, but made it so more so acceptable in the foreground to be ultimately digestible. This film, out of everything I can compare, and I don't want to shit on this because I actually quite enjoyed this to a degree, but this to me felt like the third Maze Runner film. I think the first Maze Runner is like, ugh. The second one I feel was like, okay, we're getting that blending of horror and fun, and okay, I'm maybe here for this. But then Death Cure was a film which just shit the bed for me in the fact that every opportunity it goes for, it just takes a step back. And you get the final thing between friend, and one's turned into whatever it was, a zombie or something, some shit like that. And it has to kill them, and it's horrifying, and there's choices there, but it just doesn't push that boundary. And I think the same is probably felt for here in certain ways, where I'm just sat there thinking, oh, we could have made some, we could have had a dent there, we could have had a moment, not necessarily for shock value, but like, oof. And there are attempts to do that again. To reiterate, there are attempts to do like lynching, hanging, very much visual metaphors here, and it does push the boundary on certain things, which I'm sure we'll talk about soon. In certain depictions of able-bodied people, I think it was quite horrifying to watch. That one certain thing was like, fucking hell, that's grim. But other than that, again, with stuff that doesn't feel preordained to make the audience feel a certain way, I don't think this emphasised the fact of how horrifying this really could be. Even that first sequence where we get them two as really young children running through to find food, I thought was a wonderful, really good depiction of trauma and engulfing of living in fear. And we get that cleave and we see someone bend down, and as soon as we see it, it cuts away, and I'm like, okay, I can understand that because you're wanting to impart fear on people, and he says, why are they doing that? And it's like, and we get that, we set the tone, but it reiterates that type of choice and depiction throughout the whole film. Neck break, bang, we'll cut away to someone else, and that's all well and good, but when you're relying on that, to me, sort of you shit the bed in not really following through with what you're trying to depict. I mean, these are dystopian worlds, grim realities, but dictatorship of people starving, people having to, do terrible things to survive. Push the boundary. Look, your audience is old enough to understand, and for the viewer a little bit littler, it might go over their heads a little bit, but you could play to both crowds, and this was very much YA, and that to me is like, well, will it age very well? And I just don't think this will be the one where it's like, oh, have you seen the Hunger Games Songbirds and Snakes? And people are like, oh yeah, not the one where it's like, oh shit, did you see Catching Fire? I don't know if you feel the same there, but for me, I just don't
For
see
sure.
the longevity in audiences here. It's a spectacle, isn't it? Unfortunately.
What I'm finding confusing, and not to like everyone, film is subjective, have whatever view you take. I agree fully with that conversation with you, even just in terms of what this franchise has provided. I'm not sure literally where in the film people are getting like the 5-star, this is one of the best political like commentaries of film of the decade. People are really coming away like, I don't know, maybe it's just my bubble, but people are really coming away with this like, oh, there's a power here, there's a weight here, there's a gravitas here, this is saying something so vital and important, and it's doing it so tragically. I'm normally at least can see where if people are higher on a film than I am, I can see like, oh, if this hits you, I see why this would really do it for you. I'm not sure what in this runtime, a very long runtime, people
Yes.
are getting that from, even if you've just watched the franchise before. I this is one of those where I'm really struggling to see it, which is ironic because I'm not saying it's terrible, I'm saying it's fine. But like I'm not seeing that anywhere present. I don't know if you are, but I'm
Oh,
not.
I know. I'm on the same page as you. I struggled. I mean, I saw 4s and 4.5. I was like, shit. Like, come on. Like, I've written Batman Begins and Dark Knight Rises 4 stars, and they're very much political allegoricals, especially Tale of Two Cities and the Dark Knight Rises. So I was going into this thinking I might have my mind blown here, and I think I'm going to. I don't know if we give the game away. I know we do this. I think this, to me, is like a 3-star film. I think there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's solid. I did not expect this to be very good at all. So 3-star to me is solid. If I was going to do 3.5s, maybe I'd do that. But I think it's definitely an average, solid film for me. Again, as we mentioned, the running time is just ludicrous. I do think, and again, granted, you might disagree with me here, but I think a lot of political things have indulged a lot of people within the film unit because, a lot of people, these people on Twitter as well, a lot of people on social media and watching the news, and I think there's again we've mentioned, but there's a very strong allegorical, quite poignant iconography in this film that feels hauntingly present in things revolving around our world now in certain places in the media. And I think there's one scene where, again, like the flag going on the bodies and then the flag going off and just succumbing to it and then watching children get killed. And I think, granted, I think these two are very two different things. I don't think this film is even wanting to try attempt to echo those sentiments. I just think this film came out at a certain time in the wake of something else, and people are seeing them two together, which is fair enough because I think cultural things will stay with us for a while, very much like 2012 did, and the 2015 with Mockingjay Part 1 and 2 when North Africa was having its revolt in Libya and stuff like that, and the three whatever that is was getting indulged in certain criteria within rebellions and stuff. And I think film takes on a world of its own within certain realities. I think that it's probably the opposite here, where I think people are reading into this and echoing it, and I don't see it like you do. There are moments, but nothing that felt exemplary for it. Oh, I'm not going to even attempt to do that again. You can keep that in, but it just felt like the film was going to make those choices regardless, and I think people wanting to see more than this film projects is one thing. I'd be slightly against this in this way. I'm not going to be a contrarian here, but I'll just put this out there as a devil's advocate. I think people who were giving it 5 stars should actually probably more shit on this in certain terms and thinking this didn't go far enough. And I think that's depending on your opinion of news media and digestive of news and certain things in the world. I think this had the opportunity to really dig deep and showcase that, okay, you think this is bad, but I think it's set in its ways and it is what it is. And those people giving it 5-star readings is like, oh, I don't know. I don't see in what world, in what this, because no, not 5 stars. No, I mean, I don't even, I couldn't even give you an example. That's how I'm struggling here. Again, the flag maybe, children, depiction of violence, bombings, but that was all present in Mockingjay Part 2 as well. Bombing innocent civilians for aid, uh, children being killed, sisters and brothers, and for the cause of what you thought was a protagonist, a rebellion, essentially part of the end of the dictatorship. So everything that's being done here felt like slightly redundant in certain ways, but you were right. Against the board, this is getting good reviews. I think it might be just hyperbole. I don't know about you. I don't know if you can name any moments like not stand out, but like, oh, I see that depiction. I just like
I don't see it.
no. Not
Valid though. I mean, I'm sure most people listening to this loved it. So like, you know what? Valid. You all are okay. Not I didn't see it, but valid.
Did you think this was
I know
intense?
you wanted. Or go for it.
Sorry, did you think this was
Not
intense?
really.
No,
I thought it was
didn't.
actually I thought it was quite, specifically because the runtime and how drawn out it was. I found it to be quite like a dull Blade. I would say I did not find it to be very intense.
Yeah, because I've just been reading these reviews while you've been speaking. I've been listening as well. Please don't think of anything less of me. But I'm just trying to see these 5-star reviews, and I'm seeing like there's 3 already on my friend's page, and I'm reading them. I see like these words like intense, character study. I'm not saying that. I think maybe watch Downfall, and that's the character study of a maniac, or something like Doctor Strangelove and something like their character studies. This is not necessarily a character study. This is a YA piece that's elevated by its material that's ultimately got pre-existing fan base. So I feel like it's getting one over on us. But sorry, Cass, because I just see that buzzword everywhere. I'm like, I don't really understand that, but
No, that's good. I'm happy you didn't name someone today that I have to follow now on the account because I feel bad that we called him out. So you want to talk about the depiction of bodies and able-bodied and non-able-bodied people in this. So go for it.
I mean, it's one thing from the marketing that you don't see anywhere at all, and I think it was an interesting choice to do that and sort of level market it at Blythe and Zegler. But when you get to see these people coming off the train, it's people who predominantly people of color, which is a choice, consciously, undoubtedly, and then you have someone who has Down syndrome, which I think is you've got to be very careful there. And I think that's a choice, and I think we'll get to that towards the end because there's you might have a different opinion on me there. I think that's definitely a choice, but there's also people who are not non-able-bodied, who a limb missing, and so I think someone had something with their eye, and these are all real life. I don't want to say inflictions, but real life people who are non-able-bodied. Um, it's definitely a choice to do that, and I don't know how you would disagree or agree here, but I think he executed it to a certain degree where it again put it in the shadows, but still gave it sort of precedent where there was lingering shots on and things, and and granted, it's not something like granted, I'm not picking one out of the other. It sounds terrible, but there was a certain choice to depict the actress. I mean, I just want to name her as well because I thought she's really quite chilling in this. I'll just find it now. I think it's Sophia Sanchez, who is the actress with Down syndrome. And there are certain choices in this film where we see an action and the camera in flight cuts to her wandering around. I thought it was terrifying. So I generally thought it was absolutely haunting how they did that because we cut to something, we cut to snow, cut back, and we cut to something else quite quickly, and we just see this essentially who is a child wandering around, and then they disappear for a while, and then we see other things happening, and then we get to the snakes, and it's that like genuinely it was the one moment I was like, oh, like please, she was crying, I want to go home, please, I just want to go home, and it just breaks and just engulfs her. And I felt like there's one depiction where I felt like it went for that, and I hope that it's not in the case of we'll just use that the actress with Down syndrome because we can manipulate the audience there. I feel like I may have to watch it again, but for me, I felt like it sort of earned that right to do that and to show that these are horrifying things we're watching. Granted, murder and terror is engulfs the film anyway. I'm not trying to pick one or the other, but I think it's definitely a choice to do that. And you've got to be very careful because you can't just manipulate the audience and using someone who has Down syndrome to manipulate and motively manipulate. I think that's so unfair because it's like what we've seen in Woody Harrelson, the Farley Brothers film. I was just fucking frightened to go into that as well, but I thought that did a very good job at making these people human because what are they? Human, you know? And the fact that the camera wrestles, we slowly panning in, zooming in, and we get that teary eyed, just and it's just like this echo, and the air for a second just still bang burst. I really think it nailed that in a sense of really showing the mood. But I felt like it was just one little scenario too many. Like I said beforehand, it just never went that far. But I was quite surprised, and I thought it did a very respectful manner of just having people who are neurodivergent, just with Down syndrome, limbs and stuff like that, and engage them into being human beings put forward into this. It would have been interesting to go a little bit further, and perhaps again because you're looking at Holocaust stuff right there, and we're getting to layers that the film doesn't want to go into. But then if you put them in, because why the reason why Rachel Zegler's character's in there because the games have been constructed in a way that she can be put in there. So what about these characters then? Are we saying that these are in there because they can't do the works in the district, because they can't work, because they can't be a part of the system, so they're eradicating them? Is that what they're trying to get at? For me, that's the impression. But I just wanted it to open and out, say it. Make these people, this enemy, absolute ruthless bastards. And we then understand that when we get to the end and Snow embraces that once again, we know he's made a choice. We know he hasn't got any conscience. But here they seem to be giving people multiple types of options, multiple type of things. Again, we get to buy people out with money because money's a massive thing in the political market. So there's definitely all these attributes to it. But one thing I was generally I thought was excellent is that Hunter Schafer here, absolutely shit on. Has got nothing to do except for to recoil certain emotional scenarios. Does she hit everything? Yes, she does. She's excellent at emotive discourse. She absolutely annihilates it at all. She's brilliant. Horrifically underused, just much like the character is in that whatever they do with her in Mockingjay Part 2, which is another choice. And she has one sentimental, dramatic scene towards the end, and she's sort of choking up behind and saying, you look like your Father Cornelius. She's never referred to him as that. She referred to him as his nickname, like everyone else does. She dehumanizes him in front of him, and he sort of acknowledges that and moves on. I think that was the only thing she was given. But again, to put a trans actress in a major supporting role, she has her own poster. I think it's brilliant. What a wonderful sign of representation. Do they make the character trans? No. They just let Hunter be Hunter. I think that's a brilliant choice. And again, like the other actors and actresses, just let them be who they are. But there is an interesting dialogue that was opened up there and quickly shut off. I don't know how you felt. To me, I know I've rambled there because I don't want to say anything to offend anyone, but I think there's definitely choices here.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall I definitely appreciate a lot of the diversity on screen in a lot of different ways. I think continually it feels like those points, even the point that you bring up with the young girl in that scene, the point of why that scene is tragic is not just because she is someone with Down syndrome, right? It's a
Yes.
very tragic, haunting scene regardless. So I feel like in that way, it's never like it's a cheap tactic or tool to draw sympathy.
Yes,
I think it's
and that is
done
the worry
really
as well.
well.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I think they're done well. I like the fact that the cast has so many different, in pretty much every single way, diversity and identities. I agree that they definitely could have gone deeper if you want to bring that allegory into it. I understand that, like, that is quite dark and you're still trying to
yeah,
market to teens and you're still trying to market, like, there's a very clear, if you go too far, as we can discuss with the Killers of the Flower Moon, when you go too far it stops becoming fun, like, and that's a weird statement to say because this film is not necessarily like
yes,
fun, right? It's not a comedy, but you can still have fun with this world. You can still have those small moments where it's enjoyable to watch this film, enjoyable to be in Panem for whatever it is, right? For these haunting, horrible scenes, to be very clear. If you go too far, though, you risk that. And for me, like, it just creates a disconnect if you go too far. So I really understand why they didn't go that far, but
yeah.
I still appreciate that you have that diversity. You still have that. And hopefully we're seeing between Barbie, we talked about it, we're seeing more and more of these big releases open themselves up on screen to have representation, to have different identities, not as a gimmick, not as a identity, like as far as the characters, but just portraying these characters. And so far they continually have been solid, and also not really have gotten a lot of backlash. Weird when you don't post like a PR thing about it, Disney, every single time. Like, it doesn't seem like a lot of people care that much. So I
Mhm.
hope it's something that continues, but I think it's well done here for sure.
Yeah. Also, we've come a long way from the Finkel is Einhorn, Ace Ventura, trans depiction. I think we've come a long way from then, which is. But there's a lot of room to make as well. But yeah, like you said, I think not only does the film, if it pushes that boundary, does it become a different film, but I also don't think it earns the right to do that either. I think if you're going to do that, do it in small quantities, but really do have it effectiveness. And I think it does. I think once again, it's like what I said at the beginning. You can see this on just plain Jim. Excuse me. You can see this on like plain Jane. You can see this as surface level. Someone arrives by train. We saw trains in the other movies. It's just that's the only way they get around. But then you see them get out of carriages, and it's like, oh, okay. And it doesn't really hit you until you look for it. And you're like, oh shit, it's there all along. And most of these people are non-able people, not non-able bodied, and minorities. Again, choices. And again, I think it works at that level. But I think it just generally worried me when we got to that scene of that little girl, and I thought, don't use. I just didn't want them to use her as a tool for emotional manipulation without giving them like being human. But I felt like it was like, oh, they just about got away. It was quite an honest depiction of it, and also as well as that giving that actress a dialogue before that as well was like just heartbreaking. Really did earn it. And again, I think it's just the depiction to showcase. I think again, it's difficult because you're annihilating these people who are unable bodied in a film, and then trying to give representation. That's a tough dynamic to achieve, but I think it was sort of fine as is. Somewhat agree with you in the fact that push it, you get something else, but undercut it, and you sort of representation is quite poor. But yeah, I just felt that Schaefer was just underutilized completely in this film.
For sure. I
Yeah,
mean, I would say most people are underutilized. I think specifically with the screenplay, like, even I think obviously like Viola Davis, Peter Dinklage, like, they chew up their scenery. I don't know if they ever have like that scene or they have that moment where it's like their potential is fully realized. I don't know if I would say any part of this film really is like fully realized the potential. It always feels like it's getting there, but it never actually arrives at the station for me. I don't know if you
yeah,
disagree with that, but I feel like
I
with
I
this
agree.
cast, the power here could have done a lot more, but
Yeah,
maybe
I
that's just
feel like
me.
it's. I felt when I walked away because I drove to this and drove back, yeah, and I had like this oxymoronic relationship in my head. I was like, there's 2.5 hours, but it doesn't seem a lot on screen, and I always find that's a very strange relationship for an audience to like realize. And I'm thinking, like, when you put it into perspective, nobody has that scene. Nobody has that dominating monologue. I mean, Peter Dinklage has 2 goes at it, fails both. I think for the screenplay, Blythe has it as well, fails it. Zegler does, fails it. And I think Viola fails it as well. But I think it all goes back to that screenplay because, and also, there's probably so much more. There's probably an hour of footage on the cutting room floor here of character moments. And because they needed to slimline it to get from A to B, that was a sacrifice. But ultimately, there are character choices in here, very much like there was in the first 4 Hunger Games in Elizabeth Banks' character Woody Harrelson. They all have moments. They have character motifs and stuff, and I think it gets lost here. There's the one thing that genuinely worried me when Viola Davis started when she laughed, and I was like, "Oh, we're going for a choice here." But to me, I think it was like I want to see shit like that again. That to me was Jack Nicholson in Batman 1989. She was like magnificent in it. She did not give a shit at all, and I love that because that's such a freeing energy for that actress as well. Because people compare Viola Davis to her peers and contemporaries. Oh, she's a Black Meryl Streep. She's the Viola Davis, and she's like exquisite here. She nails everything. She's uncomfortable. We don't find anything about her, anything at all. There's no need to because visually, externally, it says everything internally. It's perfect. It's just like venomous performance with no exposition at all, no dynamic information to find out why she's got that eye the way she is. She's a nutter, but she dresses in very interesting latex things, like she doesn't want to be touched. So like very interesting sort of character choices with the production and set design, which I think these films really do a good job on costume on. There's a lot of CGI here, which we'll get into very later, but it feels like there's a set design and stuff is interesting, especially with the Katniss, with Lenny Kravitz's character as well, with designing the dresses. It's definitely a motif, and here I felt it lost a little bit that in character, but made up certainly in the background. But I thought she was very good. Dinklage is an interesting one because again, we're talking about depictions here, and to me, it's like I just think that they just want Tyrion Lannister. I feel sorry for Peter Dinklage in certain ways because I think he could really play an interesting role here, and he just gives the game up in his last monologue. He's just like, "Oh yeah, I'm best friends with your father. We made a plan." I'm like, that's so undeserved, so undeserved. Why does he hate him? What? I don't know. I think there's a load of choices that really do undermine the villains in this film. Essentially, because the villain is Panem in itself, isn't it? It's the dystopian nightmare. So these are just little bits of character motif. But yeah, I agree with you. I think there's definitely choices here where it was slightly unfair to the performances. And even then, there's no wow moment either. There's no set piece here where I was like, that's astonishing. Because it's let down by lingering
Yeah.
issues. I don't know if you agree.
I mean, it would be the set piece for me. Would be the snakes. That's I think the best set piece of the film, but it's ruined by the CGI.
And
It
the
looks
trailer.
terrible.
Yeah.
And the trailer, absolutely. But like, and I think that's the biggest issue is the CGI. You mentioned it briefly. Like, it really does continually make scenes that should hold an impact, like feel bad for me. I like a lot of this world, but and I like that there is a lot of costume design, a lot of production design in some moments, and those moments are the ones that shine the best. But like, it looks bad a lot of the time. That's an issue, right? Like, I
Yeah.
think that's one of the biggest issues in the evolution of the first original films is that you go from the first film, which obviously has a low budget, everything is real, everything is grounded, and obviously this is the most like basic take you could possibly have on CGI. But then you get compared to that to Mockingjay Part 2, where everything is blowing up and you have these giant like horrible CGI slime, and like it just looks so fake that it doesn't carry the same weight. This is a blending of the two. I like what you mentioned about it in a lot of ways. This is a blending of the ideologies and the execution of the first 2 films and the last 2 films. But in this way, it plays into I think the faults of the last 2 films in a really disappointing sense, especially because so much of it is dedicated to being more basic. This is earlier in Panem, like what 70 or 65 years later, if I can do math, or 65 years earlier, I should say, from Catching Fire at least. So like everything is designed to look more basic, look more rudimentary, earlier technology, earlier ideas, everything scaled down. But then you have the CGI that just like takes you out of it. It really is frustrating to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree completely. It's interesting because again to look at the 2012 Hunger Games, there's choices to use detached camera there. There's choices to use camera that's running with you, like it's a constant moving thing, and then we get a different aesthetic with the sequel because of budgetary concerns with the first film, is that it has to utilize those. It has to utilize the fourth running idea of like, how can we make this dynamic, the budget, so they utilize a different aesthetic, handheld cameras. Catching Fire is a different beast completely. It's slower, it's more methodical, they have more time, they have a bigger budget. I mean, it's like, I think it goes from like 60 to like 120. It's a massive budget increase. The one thing that surprises me here, and this is why I came up with it, this film feels like it's caught between 2012 and 2013, and I don't think that's good enough. I think it feels like the budgetary concerns of the first film trying to be executed by the second, third, and fourth, but it just doesn't have the actual plot. It doesn't have the money to do that. I mean, on a personal level, I would have taken away all the idea of slow moving cameras. I'd have had it all handheld like the first film, make it feel rugged, make it feel boots on the ground, and devise the idea that things are cheaper because the universe is cheaper in that sense. We're devolving back into almost a generation, or maybe 2 generations. Have it boots on the ground, make it feel like a faux documentary, immerse us. Let's be a fly on the wall, and to make it all stylish and elevated. I didn't think it did anything for the material either, which is a shame. But there's a lot of choices here with the CGI and the fact that they've only got one arena, which I thought was very interesting how they were going to depict that. But it's literally a hole in the ground, and then we go into some catacombs, and it's just nothing. There's no energy. There's no texture in a lot of these scenes, and it feels like we get to like the end and we're just going up a rock. I felt like it just didn't have any dynamic endurance to it. Again, maybe that's partly the issue with the source material, but even then I was like, it just feels very very stabilized, very stagnant. I just didn't think it had any energy.
Did you find the games to be, I mean, past like the base level of like children dying and some of the camera movements, did you find the games to be that rewarding in this? Because I think that's like, out of everything here, the most disappointing was the segment in the games. I found it to be very dry, very not intense, very boring.
Yeah, and it's because it's how it's shot. Everything is like
Yeah.
sanitized. Like everything is using browns and oranges, taking all the warmth out of the image, but we're just seeing the same things reiterated. And to me, it's interesting because again, I go back to that motion. This is almost 3 hours long. It's 2 hours and let's say 35 minutes. And literally before long, it was day two and they're in the games. Like where was the build up in the fact that the first film really got the tone of where these people were in the districts. It set the ideology, set the tone, and then they brought them into Panem, and we got the idea of that people were against each other. We saw a bit of the city, but we had the politics, the dynamics of how to win. Here, it's so cut and dry. It's okay, there, and we're in there. And then for an hour, we're in these games. It doesn't feel that long because we don't see anything. It feels like there's very little evolution there, visually and thematically. They're just okay. We're there, and then we're out of there, and we're where? Sorry, and we're like we've got loads of greenery, but we're doing the with all the grain on the like we did in the Catching Fire, and it's like it just feels like there's no style here. There feels like there's no energy, which is shocking to consider. This is 2 hours and 35 minutes about a fucking Hunger Games film. Like don't get me wrong, the projection of the first film just in a massive field somewhere was interesting enough, and the second one we get the clock, and we feel like there's an evolution growing. This feels even more back than 2012's idea. I think, yeah, have it there, but have it engaging. It's meant to be like a stadium, isn't it? And I just sat there and thinking. I mean, there's one moment when they first enter the Hunger Games, and it says, "Enjoy your stay," with it, and it like jump scared me because it all goes red. And they're walking, so I was like, "Oh, very atmospheric," and then bang. It's just so mundane, such a lack of presence, and that's the staple scenario. It's like having
Yeah.
it's like having a not to degrade the conversation here, but it's very much in the same way I find that having a superhero and having really poor aesthetic or costume design. That's what we're here for. We want to be engaged, just on a visual level. And to me, throughout the whole thing, this just lacks so. Even the dress, her dress, it was like, it reminds me of my mother. I'm like, no, it had no vibrancy. There was just nothing here.
I think a lot of that is because of its attempts to make it seem more basic, because this is in ye olde times compared
Yes.
to the trilogy we're used to. But like, that justification doesn't excuse for it to be boring. There has to be a way to make it dynamic and engaging or rewarding, right? And if it's not, then like, why are we watching it on screen for 2.5 hours? Maybe this is one where like, if this world doesn't translate, maybe we should have just kept it to the book. I don't know. But it's so
Yes.
frustrating because again, in the movies, the games, yes, like tragic, obviously, but like those are some of the most fun moments because of the creativity and even in the first one, it is yes, just like a forest and field, but that intensity with that sound every single time that hits, like yeah, I'm
Mhm.
in it. Like let's fucking go. I don't know. I found that to be very lackluster, as with a lot of this film. I know you mentioned you're at like a 3.5. I think I'm at probably a 2.5. I could be convinced either to go to 3 or 2, depending on who I was talking to. But like, I don't know. It didn't do a lot for me, I guess, for kind of like
Yeah.
wrapping things up.
I don't see anything rewarding here as well. I don't see rewarding for fans. Granted, I know we're devolving to just shit on this a little bit. I don't want it to come across there, but the more you think about it, I keep on thinking of it. It's been essentially what a 8 year wait, and the same thing happened with Fantastic Beasts. And I think the films are very similar in the fact that they're made by the same people. They get the same director back. It has the same lifeblood, but the depiction just feels so different because it's in a different time. And it's interesting that in Fantastic Beasts we go. There's just no visual style to that film whatsoever. And granted, I haven't seen it. I've seen it twice. It was in 2016 when it came out, and I haven't reviewed it since. But I have seen it, and to me, it's for David Yates who made Hogwarts blow up in the part two and had emotional depth in part one with Dobbin. There's all there in the book, but then you get to these parts, and these feel like afterthoughts, which is so bizarre because the teams here. It just goes to show that this idea of going back to the well and going back to nostalgia, the creative dissonance that is sequels. It very much is a slow burner and a lackluster return. But again, for fans of this, I don't see Hunger Games fans flocking to this and being like, "This is amazing." I don't think anyone our age would go into this and be like, I thought was amazing. And if they are, I think they might be just smelling the fumes on the bus getting there because I don't see it. My audience was full of a very young kids, essentially, just like going with their friends. A lot of girls, I think. I don't know if that's Zegler. Or I don't know who is. I just think it's one of those films where they've seen Jennifer Lawrence in four of them. Probably seen the first two. Didn't think much of the second because it's a different vibe completely and watched this and thought that it was a good love story. And I don't have anything wrong with that. I don't think it justifies that at all. But I'm like seeing like quite good results here with the box office as well. But then when these audiences have got the option of this, the Marvels, I haven't seen the Marvels yet, but the projection's not very good on it. It's interesting why they're not flocking to these type of, especially to the Marvels with Brie Larson as well. I thought people would eat that shit up, especially like young girls. I think Captain Marvel seeing that on screen is quite influential, regardless of the final product. But here, I don't. Do you know, Cass? And actually, I tell you this right. If this was the beginning of a trilogy and you didn't have the first four, the first one games, Would you think this would have legs for number two?
No, I wouldn't have faith in it, but I would have hope because I would see potential for a number two. I'd be more open to a number two now if this was isolated and we didn't have what came before. But I would not have like faith. I would not be like, "Ooh, I can't wait."
See, I just see Maze Runner again. I see Wes Ball's Maze Runner. I think we've got a really
Sure.
interesting product, sanitized, too much CGI that's wonky, interesting characters who aren't quite developed enough that are interesting. We get a sequel that grows on it a little bit, takes them out here, but we then slowly but surely have the same issues, and they don't know how to land the third film and blow it. And this has just got the same stuff on. I mean, granted, you could probably say that happened to Mockingjay if you wanted to say those Catching Fire and the Mockingjay. That's fair enough. I think it has a very similar type of idea, but here it's interesting. I think they've got very lucky in a market here. I have to believe. I think they've got very lucky because I don't think these engagement levels are strong enough. I don't think because it's got Jason Schwartzman as a character that's might be related to someone else. Then you have other names that are related to other gamekeepers and stuff. I'm like, that's just not enough. It's not like a Star Wars lineage. It's not like they're related. Then that's the father to who. That's Leia Organa's father. That's Leia Organa. Like Ben Kenobi in the Obi-Wan TV. So I don't think there's enough franchise lineage for them to depict that sort of stuff. So for me, what I see is essentially what I get, and it's plain sailing as that is. I think for a lot of the other audiences, this is going to be so sanitized. It's going to be A, B, and C, and that's it. I don't think this would have legs for a sequel, even if I know they can't, because obviously it's a book and it's done and it's based on source material. But even then, I just
Wow.
don't think audiences would come back because it's not dynamic enough. It's not interesting enough. But as its own entity, God, like fair play to them, because it's the one thing that really conceived it to be what it is. Because it's self-contained, in quotation marks there. It probably just
Sure.
about justifies itself. But other than that,
Is it like, I don't know, if you watch this without the context of the other four, do you feel like the President Snow character is like rewarding? Isn't it rewarding because we see what he's become? Like, I don't think if this was self-contained in a single like runtime, this is all we get. That character delivers that much. It feels like it just gets going and then ends.
yeah, the way I would have done it, and then again, like, the way I would have done it, like trying to fucking give Francis Lawrence a run for his money, is, but I would have started it in how Catching Fire started, because when Katniss goes to meet President Snow, he says he spoke to Peter, or Peter, I don't know how the fuck you spell it now. I'll say Peter, Peter. I'll say. I don't know. I'm sure someone's going to shit on me for that, but
PETA.
yeah, Peter, Peter. It's just getting American. I'll say Josh Hutcherson. Josh Hutcherson's character, I felt that could have been the conversation them two had, and it was him there sitting there, and Josh didn't sit down. So like, let me just tell you a story, and I think that book ends the tragedy of Josh Hutcherson's character with Katniss in the fact that President Snow there is telling him a story about his life, and that he found someone in this game and destroyed him. I just think, and then him telling Petter, Josh Hutcherson's character, going into Mockingjay Part 1 as well, getting captured, and then the trauma of Mockingjay Part 2, especially with Katniss not necessarily knowing what's going to happen in Catching Fire, because there's a conspiracy at play that the audience don't know about at the start of that film until the end. But she doesn't want him to take the games anyway. I think that adds more fire, no pun intended, adds more fire to Catching Fire, and it gives it a little bit more momentum, in that we know something off screen that happened that made Josh Hutcherson's character have some choices. But also that bookends at the fact that because it ends with Donald Sutherland giving that fucking voice of it's in the trailer as well, which is so badly dubbed into it by the ADI. It's terrifying, because there's pre-existing morbid audio going over it as well, so it's being sliced out of something, a totally different scene, a different film entirely. But for him to look up at the statue, then cut back to him in the office, and then he's warning Josh Hutcherson, if this is the way it's going to go, it's not going to end happy for you. It isn't happy for me. I just think it gives it a bit more power. I think it then gives it a bit more justification to have this character have the depiction. This old bastard, right, is the dictator. He's a dictator on all these people. That we see his choices that he's made to be evil, and even in these last moments, he's using that evilness by his own emotions, his own ineffectiveness of being able to love this woman, using that as the tool to go against these two up and coming lovers in his game that he's trying to destroy. I think that's the way I would have done it. That's me anyway. I don't know if you have any theories about that at all, but I think that's the way you cut it and slice it in. Because like you said, it's like we're just watching someone in high price society fall out and then shit on everybody. Granted, that's an understatement, to get back there, and then it ends. And even then, there's like, is there not more? Just, you know,
Right.
yeah, it's like a rags to riches to rags, and to riches. And I don't, yeah.
I mean, I like that. I like that fantasy writing. I think Josh, a little bit busy with Five Nights at Freddy's, really making good
Well,
career choices over there.
there's another
But
9 of them, isn't there? There's about 9 Nights at Freddy's now. Good luck to him. He may have needed this.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that's probably the best way you could do it. I just feel like it's just, not rewarding. But while we're in this like fantasy role play space, let's say you're Francis Lawrence or you're whoever. How would you, because obviously this made a good amount of money. I feel like we're probably not done going to Panem in the cinematic universe. Where would you, if you had to make more of this, would you continue this story directly? Would you jump around different Hunger Games? What would you do if you had to make a choice of like the future of the Hunger Games on screen?
I think
What would you do?
there's two schools of thought here, because obviously this Suzanne Collins. I think that's her name. I've done my research here. I'm so hot off the presses. I didn't even stay for the credits. I just went home. This is based on a pre-existing material that was written shortly after the initial trilogy of sorts. So I think it has the muster and the courage to look at a pre-existing material. I think it's actually quite faithful. I felt as well. Very, very faithful adaptation. Reading over the synopsis. So it's being able to rest its morals and say, well, we had this, and it's interesting that it can go two of one ways. I feel, and I think this is quite relevant. It will go the way of Fantastic Beasts, where Suzanne Collins will jump on board and she will write the screenplays for them. She's not a screenwriter; she's a novelist. There's a difference, and I think that's what will happen with J.K. Rowling's writings and ramblings. With as long as Suzanne Collins doesn't come out and make fucking statements like J.K. Rowling has and ruined her career, but there's that one medium to the other. It's just because you're getting the master involved doesn't mean that you're going to have a master product. It just feels like it's wayward, and the two sequels that came after are somewhat terrible, if not unwatchable. I think Grindelwald one is just like choices in there. They've had to make choices with the third one, which I think is dire. Like, what a terrible finale to that friend. And now it's dead. Or the other option is that they don't use Collins and they go the Game of Thrones route and they don't use George R. R. Martin and depict it themselves, and look how that went. So either way, I think they'll just shit the bed. I think I think what they'll have to do is they'll have to really calm down with this, and they'll wait another few years. And the only way I think I can see this coming back is if they bring Jennifer Lawrence back, because she's been shit on with the Fox deal with Dark Phoenix, which I think is so unfair to that character as well, because she's like one of the most engaging aspects in those films. Interesting, you talk about prequels as well later. I'll keep that on board. She's purposely repelled from these type of things now, and she's choosing to do more comedic routes or more character-driven ways. I haven't seen Causeway. I need to see Causeway, but I thought that the comedy film she makes some choices in there. Depiction, I think, is very interesting because she's getting her power back from what was taken away from her 5 or 6 years ago by some prick on the internet leaking certain things that's not their authority to do so. And I think it's very, very empowering that she takes that image back. And this is, I produce this film. This is what I want to do. Brilliant. I think all more for her. What an empowering statement to make. But there will be a point when someone will reel her back in, and what more poetic to go back to a franchise that essentially kickstarted a career, and I would think has warmth to her. I think there's a warmth there. I mean, where it goes is another person entirely. I wouldn't be able to answer that question. I don't know anything about these films. I've done like morbid reading, but there's very little where it can go back. You can't bring Philip Seymour Hoffman characters back. They feel like they had a nice ending, but isn't that the tragedy of the world in that we repeat the same mistakes? But then are we not going to watch the same thing? Because she chooses to have the Hunger Games back out of spite to get back at these children. She makes the same mistakes as the people before her made about her. Depictions. I think that's an interesting route to take. But the question to follow this on, this is how it ends in the book as well. So I don't know where it would go. I know that the reason why he like coughs up blood is because he poisons people to get where he is further up. And that's a reason why he has to take. Well, there's spoilers, but he has to take it himself to prove that he hasn't poisoned someone, and that's why he's got like sores in his mouth. Is that right? And so he has to.
That's it.
So there's material there, but I mean, what's he going to do? Like, he's going to be the guy who devises the Hunger Games, but where's the? I don't know. There's material there, but what angle you take is going to be very interesting. But out of the two of them, I think you'd have to wait a while for Lawrence to come back, and I think that's more a gracious return. I'll watch a sequel to this. I don't think it'd be very, very good. I don't know why you would take it, because he's an evil bastard. Now it'd be interesting to see him rise up to be really cruel. Then you've got the Hunger Games in the background with returning characters like Viola Davis and stuff. And could there be an investigation to certain things that happen? Interesting. Could there be another political party? Interesting. But his dynamic with trying to find. I can't remember her name. I know Rachel Zegler. I do not know the character's name. It's said multiple times. I don't know. Yeah, maybe. But out of the two, I think you could make another. And does he go hunting for her? That could be interesting. But I just feel like it's done now. But have it in another world. Have another Hunger Games. And have it someone else. Maybe do that. But you've set up the lineage now, and people are going to want to know where these characters are. And people, I can't remember who produces this. Also, as well, is this Lionsgate? This isn't it?
Lionsgate.
They have Saw now on the return, don't they? As well.
Yeah,
I think so. They don't have Saw.
No, they do. I believe, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting that they both got two dead franchises off the ground, and
Yeah.
I know they're going to make another Saw, and they're going to make with a lot less money. But this is interesting to see if they get one another off the ground. I don't know. What do you think? I see it two ways like that, but I'm not really going to run out and go watch either one of them. I'm not going to be with my placard outside like, I want another one. I want another one.
That's me with Saw. I'll be
Yeah,
there
I
for
know
the
you
Saw
are. Yeah.
11
It's in the
protest. I'm
background.
not going to be there for the.
Show everyone you've got it in the background. You've already got it ready. Saw 11?
um,
Question mark.
yeah, 11, 12, 13. I have them all ready back
We know
there.
you're going to get them. You're
I
going to get them.
agree. Oh, for sure. That's the best part of it. I win.
Yeah.
I won, guys.
Yeah.
And I'm getting Mamma Mia 3. When those released the same year,
Well,
sorry, I won. Um,
that's just
I don't
cruel.
really. I mean, I agree. Those are the two most likely scenarios for the future of this series. I don't really want either of them. The only thing I would really want from this is just like an original story. There's what 74 or 73 of these not explored. Just pick a random one. Give us Hunger Games 46. Pick a random character from a different district. I think there's a lot still that can be explored on the politics of the individual districts. And then you can still have little bits there as they go to the capital, they do the whole thing. You will see Snow. You will get those small pieces of world building that you can still get, like the evolution of Snow. You can get those little through lines, but then just have it be the games and have it be really unique and have these individual entries. That's the only thing I really want as a consumer. I don't need another Snow focused film. I know a lot of people are like, oh, go to the next Hunger Games the very next year to see how Snow is changing them. I'm like, I don't really need that. I don't really want Lawrence to come back. I want like that to be Mockingjay Part 2 to be the furthest in the future we go. I don't really see like where it would go from there that's that engaging. I don't know. I'm
It would
not a
undermine the
huge.
material as well, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't feel like I need. I mean, to be honest, I don't really need many more Hunger Games projects in general.
Yeah.
But if so, the one thing that you can change and keep fresh and keep engaging is the actual games themselves. So just focus on that, right? Do the
Yeah.
narrative of the first film and just maybe they don't win, right? But like, I don't know, there's something there.
I mean, if we're fantasy writing here and we're giving them some free ideas, I'd set this 10 years ahead and then seeing develop as a human being and see him conniving to go through not only the presidency but getting over Viola Davis's character. And that'd be interesting. How you would do the Hunger Games themselves. It'd be interesting to sort of have him as an antagonist and just having someone who perhaps is very similar to his upbringing, seeing him devise a way to get inside. But like you said, I just don't think it earns to have another go. I mean, it's done, isn't it? Let it go for a little bit and then see what the rampant. Because I don't think anyone really asked for this either, did there? I don't think there's anyone there. No jokes aside, but no one's writing to Lionsgate. I mean, like release the new film. Also as well, the one thing that I thought was quite key is that I know this had a special relationship with SAG, so that they could talk about this film. I've not heard of anyone on two or three film contracts, which I think is very interesting. Perhaps they weren't allowed to talk about that to the discourse of contracts within film anyway. So I'm not going to sort of have a conspiracy here, but I do find it interesting that no one spoke about. Oh, I'm on a 3 picture deal here. If I was Lionsgate, I'd probably want to tap up Blythe as well to 3, Viola Davis for 3, at least just to have a little bit of longitude and opportunity to do that. But the fact that I haven't heard that doesn't fill me with great joy anyway. But I'm not, like you said,
I'm sure those will be coming. I think like this is a property we haven't seen cinematically since what 2015, and even then, I don't think the final one made like a shit ton of money. So I could see them just wanting to test the waters because why sign people to a 3 picture deal if this bombs and there's just no interest in it? I would not be shocked in the next like month if this continues to perform strongly at the box office to be seeing those releases.
Well, it reminds me of Jennifer Lawrence's deal. Like she was paid $100,000 to do Hunger Games, then she renegotiated to get 3 million or 10 million for Catching Fire. So you've also got the issue there to play with because Lionsgate is not a massive major component to the house of Disney, is it? It's a smaller production house in comparison, of course. But to then renegotiate these contracts from $100,000 to 10 million, I mean that's one in a lifetime with Jennifer Lawrence because obviously she won the Academy Award the year later with the Silver Linings Playbook. But even here, I'm like, oh, you've got to be very careful because if anything happens here in the long run, you're going to be paying an extortionate amount of money to get these people back. And then will the question be, well, is it essentially worth it? And to me, there's nothing here where it's mesmerising to have the material to return to. Oh no, I was just going to say, I'm actually quite shocked that you're on the boat of seeing more in terms that you think the more will be developed. I'm like, I don't know. I feel like this
What
is
does Lionsgate have though? I feel like Lionsgate
yeah,
like has nothing. So whatever they can take, that's why I feel like we're gonna get a lot of Saw. And we're gonna get a lot of Hunger Games, is because like,
yeah,
literally, what else do they have? I
yeah.
mean, they're apparently doing new Twilight something. I don't know if that's even Lionsgate, but like, what do they have? They have John Wick, I
Yeah,
guess, but that shit. I mean, we'll see what Ballerina does. I don't think that's
yeah.
necessarily a gold mine for the future.
Well, I'll be waiting.
Expendables.
I'll be
I didn't
please.
see the new one.
I don't think anyone else did. I have it shit, but the fact that you haven't watched the Continental as well, which I think you're meant to be a fan. Excuse me, but 3-part series, Carson, get on it. Yeah, the output's really poor. I also feel like this is a tactical decision into. I think they got very lucky here. I think they made it very very small independent money in terms of like 80 million, 100 million, which is small in terms of budgets. I feel like they negotiated very small gross contracts with these actors and actresses to keep the budget down. The fact that it's done very well has helped them out. In the long run, I don't think it will do. In the short run, it has. But also, I do feel like it's a tactic to renegotiate the rights for the books, to keep the rights if anything else happens. Now they have another 10-year lease. I feel like it's one of those ideas. I don't know how long the rights would have lasted for, if they're 10 years, 15 years, if they go back to, the default back to Suzanne Collins. I'm not too sure. But I do think it's interesting now that they have the idea. Now, if they want to do anything with the material, they can do. Maybe they'll do a TV show and sell it to Amazon again. Maybe that'd be interesting. But I feel like if they weren't going to start from the first Hunger Games, and this is now the third one, and whatever it is, the fourth quarter, I don't know what even that means. I'm a stan here, but if they're not going to show the actual depiction of the first one, and we've gone back to see this character, we're going back for these characters, which again we both agreed are very much less important to the whole role anyway. So I don't know. I don't think it has got much longevity in it. I'd be very shocked if I saw another one. I mean, granted, good money, but the first thing when I came out was like, I didn't think anything of them ever wanting to make another one. But are the fans out there clamoring? I'll have to just go back to Twitter and hashtag it and see. But no, I didn't see anyone there. I mean, do you remember going to watch the other ones in the cinema?
Oh yeah.
Was it packed?
The Catching Fire was, because I went again to the midnight premieres. Catching Fire was packed. Mockingjay Part 1 was packed. Mockingjay Part 2 was me and 5 people.
Yeah. I think that's just the course that these films take, though, don't they? I think it's just so.
Right.
I can. If they want to do another one, it'd be interesting to see it. I've got no idea where they'll take it. And usually, when we talk about this, just John Wick, for example, when the first one ends, we can take that anywhere. Here, it's very much like, oh, we're done. We're done now. And I think.
But I thought we were done after the first 4. I didn't think we were going to be getting this. So I don't know if they've already done that expectation once.
Do you know what frightens me about this is that they announced, didn't they, as well? Bob Iger was like, they announced Planet of the Apes 4, didn't they? And they announced we're going to have more Maze Runner films. And I just sat there and I thought, what the fuck are you doing? And then it's like, oh, but where's Balls on board? And then we watched that trailer and it says absolutely nothing, which is like a massive red flag. When we're showing the apes, we got that. We saw Andy Serkis. We wanted him to be nominated for it, and now we have no idea what that story's about. Again, that's another franchise similar to this in that it has to end at one point, but they've fucking rinsed it for being to go really interesting to a point. I don't see the longevity here for that, and I didn't see it in the Maze Runner. So that's really upsets me.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and
I mean, even the Maze Runner is fucked because no one saw at least Hunger Games, people saw the films. Maze Runner, no one saw past maybe movie 2. I don't think the last one did that well. Planet of the Apes, I mean, obviously ended pretty, I think, solidly back in the day. We're back, but also now we have Peace and Love, a bad director. Yes. So I don't think it's going to be good to get the fans in. And I think teens who see the Hunger Games Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is a forgiving audience. It's not going to be those teens who go see Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So I'm not seeing it personally for these.
Just about, I had a physical reaction to Death Queue. I had a review of it. I could have to do it bullet points. It fucking killed me to do that. And I don't think Boys Balls Planet of the Apes is going to be as bad as this. And I also don't think Songbirds and Snakes is going to be bad as this. But I will go back to this, and I'll go back to you've got your target audience and then your intended target audience. And your target audience is essentially anyone from 11, maybe a bit younger, to about the early mid-20s. But the intended audience really is to get fans back on board, but really get those young kids. And I'm sorry, but I can't see any 11-year-old sitting down and watching this and going to school the next day and be like, you've got to go see the new Hunger Games. Like, it's amazing. This is not a film where, like, the Lord of the Rings films came before it for, like, the YA audience years before it, or even the Star Wars prequels are, like, no one in the playground is talking about these films, and essentially that's what it needs the audience to grow up with them. I just don't. This is too highbrow at this point for this audience. It's also boring enough and not pushing enough for an elder audience here. So it's a very strange correlation between what it wants to depict and how it engages with its audience. So I mean, they'd have to really dumb it down for a sequel, or really go for it. And I just don't think people give a shit anymore. I think they're really lucky with this. That's probably as much as I could say to just sum it all up. This, I think people are in opening Monday morning or Friday morning, be like, "Woo! We didn't get a tax write-off this time." You know, I do genuinely think there were. I don't think the expectation for this was this good, which just shocks me even more so that going against the Marvels. A year ago, we saw these two going again. If we had a bet a year ago, we'd have both said the Marvels. We would have done
for sure.
So
for sure.
that shocks.
What's wild is that the previous week was open, like nothing released, and neither of these took the opportunity to move. That's crazy.
I just there's either someone at Lionsgate like going, "I'm having the bonus," or someone was really packing their bags on Friday evening and thinking, "I need to get out of this town. I need to get away from here." And then there was a phone call, and there was some shit in a break. And thought, we've hit the box office record. We've done it. We've done the Marvel. And thinking, you know, I'm genuinely shocked. I cannot believe we're actually talking about it having a sequel, that it did money.
Yeah.
That it's 2.5 hours long.
Yeah.
Fair play.
Do you know about the end credit scene for the Marvels? Have you had it spoiled for you?
Yes. It looks terrible.
Okay. It would be interesting, Jennifer Lawrence's direction, considering both these opening at the same weekend, as far as which franchise, if she decides she wants to engage with either.
She ain't going back there. She is not going back there.
I know she was. I love Jennifer Lawrence. I'm really hopeful. I hope she doesn't come back to either. I think she's finally taken her break she needed. She's found her voice with No Hard Feelings, Causeway. She's doing what she seems very happy with. Don't go back to the franchise. Don't go back to any franchise. You don't need the money. Just don't do it to yourself. Why?
She genuinely, right? And I'm not. I actually quite have a soft spot for Jennifer Lawrence. Not only do I think she's genuinely wonderful, but she's so down. This is a projection. She might come out and be child killer. I don't know. Not that she is. I've had a drink. That's just for legal reasons. I'm not. But there's this. She gives this really authentic, down to earth impression that she's just organic. And that's, when you get chat show hosts and you get people who are just bastards, then you get in the pavement that they're also bastards. Then you get in there's the gossip sites, they're also bastards. And then they hit the kids, or they've done drugs, and they do, not that people do drugs are always bad inherently, but you know what I mean. And they've done terrible things. And she's just I think tripping up at the Oscar stage. I'm like, oh, that's embarrassing. But she's like, fuck it, I'll throw it off. She's made some choices with her films, and but she's really bounced back from everything. I think owning that career, she's an indie darling through and through, but she has the charisma and the energy to nail that target audience above and bring to her level, and that is captivating to a point where there are very few people can do that. Especially how young she is, how cinematic academic she is. It'd be very interesting to see where she would evolve her career if she went behind the camera. Because I think that'd be very interesting to see her go the indie route and give someone else the road there. I feel like they've tried to do this with Caitlin Denver a lot, and they've tried to do it with other actors. They'll do it with the Ziegler. They'll try and do it with Ziegler. But Jennifer Lawrence came from that 16-year-old in Montana shooting a $100,000 film in the freezing fucking snow, and then was given an opportunity to do Hunger Games, and it blew up. And she's done some very, very creative choices. She's worked with some very strange people, but she's done amicable jobs. But it's interesting because when I look at it, I think what I found, not to go on the Marvels here, because I know we're going to go on and on, but there's a very certain, very distinctive choice, right, that the MCU and Feige have decided to choose between two avenues of the X-Men franchise. One is the Bryan Singer avenue, and the other one is the Matthew Vaughn, for example. And granted, I know that the previous prick, I'm not allowed to say that, came into the second one and destroyed it in his own right for doing certain things. But it's interesting how they're choosing to go the Bryan Singer route, and the fact that that franchise now is almost 30 years old, going on 30 years old. Most of those people are not really in the position to come back and have longevity. The fact they haven't gone for McAvoy and Fassbender, who he fucking needs to get back into commercial hits, and gone through that route, Nicholas Hoult as Beast. Not saying he's in that, just saying that's a choice, and not to choose Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique or depict certain that sort of trendy, more younger, vibrant side of the X-Men is a very interesting depiction to do that. I find that very interesting. And then you read about the Fantastic Four route, and they're choosing very much an older type of cast there as well, with allegedly Mads Mikkelsen and Pedro Pascal who are hitting in the 50s. Very strange choices to go for an older generation rather than new. So I think Jennifer Lawrence will probably be lucky not to go back there. And I think hearing to be into that outfit for 7 hours, to be spoken to like a piece of shit by an egomaniac who's got hefty accusations against him, I'd leave that there as well. I just hope that the Hunger Games franchise is warming to her, because I think it's good to have an outreach, I suppose, but she's strong enough not to need that, and she's very rare to not have to go back. You know, how many people do you see having to go back to the well and it being shocking? You need to watch Expendables 4. You need to see choices in that film. The fact that people can't seem to let that piece of shit go, it's quite interesting. But you see it all the time, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely not a rare narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that wrapping up, just any final thoughts on this film, I will just say, again, valid for anyone who liked it, was not for me. After having this conversation, I think I'm even less on it than I was going into this. You know, everything it does well, it does like fine. It has some good world building, some good visuals. I think the representation on screen is good. I just think when it comes to narrative, a lot of the filmmaking, storytelling, pacing, runtime, basically everything that goes into making a film, it just does rather poorly. So I'm not a fan of it. Not as big of a disaster as Mockingjay Part 2, still, I will say, but not for me. Jack, have you had any revelations?
I've talked way too much on this. You indulge me too much. I'm not going to go on, but I don't have any revelations. I do agree with you, and the more I talk about this, more I'm like, oh god, I don't know if I like this. It's very difficult to not go out of this and just have an hour or two and maybe a day just to relax my thoughts. It's difficult. I enjoyed this for what it was. This doesn't have any legs to me. I watched it. That's it. I enjoyed talking about it. I think we've done probably more of a service to this film than the film has done a service to us. I thought it was fine. I think everything's fine, amicable and fine. It's a gross depiction I can put over everything. The cinematography is fine. The production design is fine. The performances are fine. Set design is fine. Score fine. I'm not happy with 2.5 hours running time. This is 2:10 at least. I don't think this needs to be that long. I'm not going to watch this probably ever again. I don't see why I would. I just don't. Because I'll watch Hunger Games and Catching Fire again, and if I watch the other two, I probably would do. But I don't see any longevity in watching this again, just because I think I've seen there and done that. But yeah, this is like a 3-star film for me. If I was going to think about it more, I'd probably have to drop it. But I think it's just fine. I know that sounds like ruthlessly just like in important and just like nonsensical in a way because we've just spoke really, really strong about it, but it really is the conscious depiction under the dictionary thesaurus of fine, isn't it? It's fine.
Yeah. I will fall into the trap when the sequel releases of rewatching this and being like, maybe I missed something because everyone else loves it, and then I'll be like, oh no, actually I was right on the bat. So if you want to watch this, though, if you want to, after this glowing review, if you've not seen it already, you can check it out in theaters. I'm sure it will be on streaming soon. Let's go to our question of the week, where we're asking a big one this week. What's the best prequel, or what's your favorite prequel film? I will start because I'm going to be honest. I sent this to you and I was like, oh, I need to think of that ahead of time. And then about 15 minutes ago, I realized, oh, I have to answer this question. So I did some, looking around. I could have missed something. I'm going to go with possibly a strange choice, kind of related to something we talked about. I'm going to go Escape from the Planet of the Apes. It's a very weird one, right? In narrative and in a lot of directions.
That's so
but
niche.
I really think it is niche, but I think they go in such a fun, unique direction with what this film is, and I'm not going to spoil it if anyone hasn't seen it, but coming out of the first film, you definitely would not expect this as the next step, but watching it, I like really love it. I think the final emotions do hit. I think it's a perfect blending of fun with social commentary. I really enjoy the original Planet of the Apes series. That's like, it's a gem, I think, of cinema. But I think this is like a really fun one, a strange choice. It was this or Fast Five. I'm gonna be honest; those are the two that it boiled down to for me. So I went with this. But Jack, do you have an answer for this?
I would love to get into those Planet of the Apes films because I did that rewatch ages ago, and anything after Beneath is like very interesting to me. I was going to go for something niche. I think Nick would have done Firewalk with me. I think the Star Wars prequels, but there is one which I think Godfather Part 2 is not very fair if that's what one I was going to choose. But the one I genuinely think is like looking back on it's aged really well, and I know I've shit on him, not you. I have. My favorite prequel is probably going to be Days of Future Past, the X-Men one. I was going to choose Prometheus or Alien Covenant because I think Alien Covenant takes some really bold choices. And also Prometheus in a way, but Alien Covenant, like that's Ridley Scott going like, I'm doing a film for me, fuck you, to his fans. Like, okay, Ridley, you do that. I don't think that's going to work, but you do that. But I enjoyed that film to agree that it is. But the thing with X-Men Age of Future Past, me and my sister, we used to really like comic book movies like that, and that's sort of the big withstanding franchise. I mean, Daredevil's a piece of shit, and Elektra didn't do anything, but those films like were massive in its day. I think Batman preluded it as well as Superman, but I don't like them anyway. But this was like a different thing, and it was the right time for us to watch it. So we always have like an affectionary input of the first two X-Men. Last Stand by Brett and you shouldn't even be allowed to say that man's name on the internet. I mean, again, not to get back in it, but the X-Men franchise and people directing them who turn out to be pieces of shit is very interesting. But when that was announced that they were going to get one lineage to the other, I thought was very interesting because Matthew Vaughn had done First Class, which you could probably say be on that list as well. But to bring Bryan Singer back and ultimately get rid of Vaughn's very interesting, and how he melds those two timelines and even gets the poignancy of McConaughey, Jesus, McAvoy and Patrick Stewart to get that poignant last scene, especially with Fassbender as well, and get performances of him is really good. The fact that like he went so far to get prosthetic noses for them to sound like them, and then just forget about it after with Apocalypse and different thing. But I think just as a monumental achievement, I think when we start getting into this next phase of the Marvel stuff, even if we haven't already touched upon it now with No Way Home, I think it's a massive achievement in its own right to get those two together, but also make peace with what came before and start again. I think it's massive, and also to make it really engaging. Peter Dinklage is amazing. I think I mean, again, I think I've watched the Rogue Cut as well, which I think is so underrated how they utilize to it. But yeah, that was probably my best choice, just out of preconceived ideas of it being it could be real shit. But the fact that they melded them two together, I'd probably give more plaudits to that. I don't want to. If I had to say anything, I'd probably say Revenge of the Sith. Oh, that 2005, that blew my mind. 2005.
Is that your favorite film of 2005? Or it was at one point?
Probably Kingdom of. I mean, it was probably when I was like maybe at the time.
Sure.
Yeah, but I mean, Kingdom of Heaven's pretty good there, and then there's other stuff. But yeah.
I assume you mean the extended cut, the director's.
Yeah, the roadshow version. Yeah, Ridley's gonna have an interesting time in Napoleon, but obviously someone's already seen it. So
hey,
yeah,
we'll be talking about it next week. No worries there. No worries.
So. I'm hoping we get some screenings of it, although we will do. But if you had to choose another one, what would you choose? Something a bit more latest, let's say last 2 years, not 2 years, last 2 decades. It's hard, isn't it?
Probably Fast Five. I don't know. Like it's hard because a lot of prequels, to be honest, are not good. I'm not a Star Wars stan. Let's say I don't really need to engage that group today. I probably would say, I don't know. Would I be weird and say Attack of the Clones? Possibly. I don't know.
What about?
I really don't. They're just not great.
What about
Prey? Prey was pretty good.
Yeah, Prey. What about Paranormal Activity 3?
Oh, it's definitely there. Saw X. Could you kind of say?
Yes. There are two we haven't mentioned, and I feel like we should do. I don't want to say it out loud because I will get ill, so I'll let you. You know what I'm talking about anyway.
Go for it. I think you should. I think it's helpful. You weren't even on the to be clear.
I was fucking really ill when we did The Believer. I did the Gems. I should never have done that. I was so ill. But we did Dominion and Exorcist, the
Yeah.
prequel. I mean,
Dominion is good. Go listen to Uncut Gems.
it's
I'll
there,
say,
isn't it?
you
It's
know.
there. I mean, it's very hard to do a
Hey, I have
prequel.
my first Reformed hat on right now, so gotta rep Paul.
But Mr.
It
Strader.
sucks. I don't know why I bought this because no one gets this from a Paul Schrader film, and now everyone just thinks I rep like a random church, and I'm like, well, no.
It's quite funny. Um, yeah, prequels are very very difficult to envision. I think
Yeah, I
there's
would.
very there's very there's a lot more poor versions than better. I think I'd say.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. I would love to hear from our audience, either on YouTube, Twitter, email us at clappercast@gmail.com. I would love this is like a specific question. I would love to hear what everyone else thinks because I'm sure there's some we're missing, but
I
I
honestly,
can't really think of many.
the first
Captain
person.
Marvel. I enjoyed Captain Marvel, not to bring up the
I don't,
Marvels.
yeah, I watched it. That's one of my first films in IMAX. I watched it straight after Dumbo. It was a choice. But the first person who was like, "Well, Indiana Jones and Temple of the Doom is a prequel," or "The Good and the Bad and the Ugly" is actually a prequel. Come on, let's have some more fun. Let's just say
Right.
Fast and Furious, Tokyo Drift. You know, the London
Hey,
one.
it's fun.
You know, I'm sure that happened. You know,
Yeah. Well, I think that we've done the question of the week then. Let's go to our rapid reviews. Jack, is there anything you've seen recently that you'd like to mention?
oh god, I've been doing my Noir November, so I've been watching some very strange films. Been watching Suspect with Charles Layton in it, which is very interesting. The Lodger, which is actually a remake of Alfred Hitchcock. The Roaring Twenties with James Cagney is outstanding. Angel Dirty Faces. I've got a few more. Then I'm going to give up after that. But I've been watching sort of like for stuff for gems, Bob Fosse, just to get off the blind spot. But I watched we spoke this I think last week to Nick. Kiyoshi Kurosawa films. I've watched Charisma, which is like, whoa, it's as dense as you can probably get, but quite rewarding. I've watched some Johnny To films, The Mission, I think, as I mention it every week. I got back into my Godzilla marathon. I watched Invasion of Astro Monster. Very interesting film, I'll say that at least. I'm going to try watch The Creator at a late showing maybe tomorrow. I'm probably going to have to watch Captain Marvel. And then for Clapper, I've got Next Goal Wins to review, which is just frightening me because I'm tired of that man. So tired of that man. I'm going to watch Thanksgiving though as well. That's getting like loads of screenings here, which shocked me because I didn't think that would go back. But I've been watching Sylvester Stallone movies. I watched Nighthawks, which is like such a. It's very similar to it's not, but it's interesting to watch something that could be so much better, just stagnated and sanitized. But that's really it. I mean, I've just got a lot of noir movies that I'm doing documentary to December, which is going to kill me. But I'm going to try do some more Godzilla movies, and I'm going to try, and I'll finish my Universal Monsters. I've got Spanish Dracula and the two Revenge of the Creature sequel. Revenge of the
Mm,
Creature. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's it
yeah.
because I watched She Wolf,
Hey,
which
good
is
on
not.
you.
Yeah, I'm doing it for. I'm
She
doing
Wolf,
it for.
I think, is like
It's
I think She Wolf is
underrated.
wildly underrated.
Yes,
Wildly. Because
I
it's
definitely.
like it's not at all what it's not unlike any other film. It's like a psychological thriller, right? Completely.
Yeah,
And I think people really like reject it for that. But I love She Wolf of London. Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely retrofitted as well. It definitely feels like it's not meant to be that in that quandrum, but I thought it was good. Yeah, like I said, I've watched a lot of Bogart recently. King of
Mm.
the Underworld, just very interesting. Talking about like very strange film has a he's like a gangster in Chicago or something. This is very early. It's a B movie. It's only 67 minutes. Hires a doctor to help him. Doctor gets killed. Then the doctor's girlfriend follows this gangster, and they go for a runabout and rob a bank. And then weirdly enough, pick up a hitchhiker who's British. Follow me. Stay with me here because it gets more interesting. I promise you. Who they take captive to then rob a bank and leave. So the police think he's done it. Then he gets released. Finds the young woman whose husband was killed, who was a doctor. They then decide to get in cahoots. Then the British guy goes to meet Humphrey Bogart again, and then says he'll write his life in a book, The Napoleon of Crime, and to say that makes jokes about being a mystery, and Humphrey Bogart's character is really stupid. Not to spoil this film's fucking 1937, but the doctor then poisons all the gangsters with eye drops, so they all go blind. And the last 10 minutes of them going through a house, he's got a gun, and it's just all on sound. Very well ahead of its time. Very interesting. That's probably the most intriguing film I've seen. But if you're going to watch something that'll blow your mind, watch Charisma by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. He's a very interesting filmmaker cast as well. He did Pulse, and he did. There's another one where it's like, oh my god, I can't remember the name of it. It's like it's the start of the phenomenon in Japanese cinema about the 21st century issues with
Is it
technological growth. It's Cure.
Cure? Yeah.
You get into that.
I-
They're films where do you know when you watch filmmakers where they're like, I'm not holding your hand through this. I'm going to turn all the lights and you can find your way out. And if not, you can drown in here. I feel like he personifies that. He's like a Kubrick of his time in the sense of, I'm not going to give you anything. I'm going to give you bits and bats, but you can make your own mind up. I mean, Charisma is like, I would love to hear 2 or 3 people talk about that and give their interpretations because it's madness. But no, that generally, like I would find that very interesting for you to seek out because it's crazy stuff.
Very smooth way to ask for an episode on Charisma. I love Japanese cinema. I've not seen any of his films, so I would definitely be down to check him out.
Yeah.
For me, I'm going to go a little bit of a different route. Adam Sandler has a new Netflix animated film called Leo. Maybe a little bit less of a cinematic lens as the ones you've mentioned today. I love this film though. In context, it's about like Adam Sandler is this like lizard who's a class pet, and he starts going home with the kids and starts like helping them with their problems because they learn he can speak English or whatever. It's cute. It's very fun. It's a musical, but also like, as to put in context, someone who's worked in education and works in education currently, this ends up just becoming a love letter to like teachers and the power of educators in students' lives, and it really got me. Obviously, in context, it's an Adam Sandler animated movie. So don't expect this to be, that deep or that incredible. But I was laughing consistently. And I think it is like a weird gem for Netflix, which commonly produces just like absolute garbage. Probably my favorite Sandler comedy in quite a while. So I would recommend Leo to everyone on Netflix if you want something a little lighter, as far as what Jack mentioned. With that, that's going to do it for today's episode. Jack, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter or X and Letterboxd with a username at Jak-Luke Sharp. It's just my name. And you can find ramblings and a few features to come out on Clapper soon, and reviews of Next Goal Wins and the next Foot Soldier movie for any members out there who maybe want to read that review. And I don't know if they'll be able to read, but fair play to them.
You can find me on Twitter at BP_movie reviews, Letterboxd Carson Tamar. Thank you so much for joining us today. A bit of a bonus episode. I know this is not our normal bi-weekly schedule. We have a few of these coming out over the next couple months just because there's so many releases. Me and Nick have Poor Things coming out in a couple weeks. Jack will be talking about Ferrari at some point when it releases. I think probably early January or late December. And then we also have our normal schedule. We have Napoleon coming soon, The Boy and the Heron review. We have stuff on Patreon. Me and Nick have a John Couture double feature we're doing. I'm sure that's going to get all the clicks in the world. But then next month, Jack, you're signed up for it. We have Wonka. We're 1 month away from Wonka.
And it's showing here as well.
Hopeful. Oh, it's showing for you a week earlier than it's showing for us here. So
I think
no excuses.
I'll be there. It's 8th of December, so I'll be there with my my golden ticket. Yeah.
I don't know if that's hopeful for you in the future, or if that's a threat or a depressing thought. But we'll be there.
I've just realised that, like, the film we've just talked about today, it's 10 minutes shorter than Interstellar. And Interstellar,
haunting.
Interstellar takes us from the end of the Earth as we know it to a next generation. We just watched a few people like have sexual tension, and if you can call it that. But this has been a journey.
How long is this one that we talked about today?
I think it's 2:35, isn't it?
1 second. Games Ballad. Let's see one thing just very quickly. 150. Oh, exact same runtime to the minute as Napoleon, which follows Napoleon's entire political career. Do with that information what you will.
I think we'll talk about
we'll discuss that. I guess next week we can at least compare them more. With that, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back next week and also on Patreon within a week. Goodbye.